Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1641 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news and live breaking news right out of Russia that major explosions are erupting across Russian territory this evening amid a brand new Ukrainian attack in Krasnodar, Crimea, and several other regions. Also, Putin is now dedicating himself to escalating strikes against the civilians in Ukraine as the Russian food is now collapsing, and it has begun and is apparently getting extremely dire. Also, NATO is continuing to prepare for a Russian escalation in the Baltics, and I suspect tonight we will have some breaking news throughout the stream. It's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments, particularly within Eastern Europe today, the Middle East, East Asia, and also the United States of America over the course of this day. Ukrainian armed forces have conducted major drone attacks against the Russian Federation, causing significant and catastrophic damage to Russian military facilities, air search radars, and other critical infrastructure within Crimea and Krasnodar overnight. The ozone facility at the city of Samara is continuing to burn to the ground as of this day today after major strikes hit the facility overnight. We are also hearing that as a result of this damage, there is now a brand new ozone bingo card that has been put out inside the Russian Federation as we now count down the major distribution facilities left in the ozone company, which are now also targets of the state of Ukraine. Due to the failing situation of the Russian Federation's economic apparatus and also the ability for the Russian government to further finance the war due to the failing economy of which they are currently sitting on top of, the Putin government has now declared a doomsday plan and has now announced that they will be conducting strikes against critical infrastructure and major and fragile industries within the state of Ukraine to be able to attempt to completely deprive the state of Ukraine of food, money, and any other materials necessary to continue the war against the Russian Federation. The Russians have also stated that they will be targeting and destroying Ukrainian grain resources resources inside the country, regardless whether it creates global famines, with Ukrainian grain no longer being accessible to the public or greater global world. We have also seen that the Russian citizens themselves are continuing to descend into riots, chaos, and nothing but misanthropy as they are continuing to try and find fuel in the country, but the fuel is incredibly low in number. At the same time, we have also seen that the Ukrainian armed forces have held the front lines today and have inflicted significant casualties onto the Russian Federation's armed forces. Moldova has also accounted for 3 independent Russian drone incursions into their airspace overnight, and additionally, the Federal Republic of Germany is now putting 12 billion euros into a new cruise missile munitions procurement program to be able to grow the amount of cruise missiles and also munitions that the Federal Republic of Germany's armed forces, the Heer, have to work off of at some point in the future, or the Bundeswehr, as it's actually called for all of the branches of the armed service. We also saw that an airspace situation that has not really been explained too well happened in Riga, Latvia, as multiple flights that were supposed to land at the airport had to actually circle the airport in orbits, waiting for permission to land earlier in the day. The reason for this is largely unknown, at least to this moment. We have also been able to hear that in Belgium, the U.S. ambassador to NATO said that the United States is actively defending against Russian drone incursions and attacks on NATO soil, and the French have now stated that they will be giving more missile interceptors to the state of Ukraine to be able to help out their already largely failing air defense in terms of large caliber air defense systems. We've also got major news out of the Middle East that the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran is continuing to argue, at least publicly, over who actually controls the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, we have also heard that the Iranians are now threatening that they will completely shut down the Strait of Hormuz and attack any Gulf states if they ally with the United States of America in future strikes, as it does appear that the Iranians are preparing for a new round of conflict with the United States of America that they either expect the United States to start on them soon, or for the Iranians to try and kick off on their own and take the United States off guard. The Israeli Air Force is continuing bombardments of Hezbollah forces within southern Lebanon, and the Israelis are still continuing to pick the Turks as an enemy, stating that they are now openly against the Turks opening up or creating military bases within northwestern or northeastern Syria, stating that that is a red line to not be crossed, and that the Israelis will conduct significant reprisals against the Turks if they continue with such an action. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear in Taiwan that a Taiwanese satellite missile actually had a failure today at its debut, showing that the Taiwanese will continue to have a difficult time getting any kind of military satellites into orbit before a conflict with China, and a significant earthquake also hit Tokyo, Japan over the course of last night. We've also been able to hear news from the United States of America that they are currently stating that oil and gas production here in the States is at an all-time high, as we're seeing that they're attempting to work their way around the oil shortages that are being seen in the Strait of Hormuz. And the United Kingdom has also reported that a British power plant was actually shut down several months ago due to an Iranian cyber attack. We have major news coming from around the entirety of the world today that we have been able to get over the past 24 hours, but it actually appears that we have breaking news coming out in the last few minutes right here, right now. So before we get on into any of our normal breaking news, it's time for us to get to the breaking news coming out on air live right now. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so it looks like we have a situation developing right now inside of Russia that was not on our radar tonight, but it looks like something has happened right outside of St. Petersburg, Russia, which is a very large city right there, by the way, also home to a large Russian naval port. It appears to be that a sudden, spontaneous, massive inferno has started, apparently at the site of what appears to be maybe a warehouse or something like that, apparently right outside of St. Petersburg in Kolpino, Russia. There was no warning whatsoever of a drone attack in that area, so it could be an accident or maybe sabotage or something like that, but we have a video showing this massive fire. It looks like the Russian first responders are just showing up to the scene, and it is a massive one to say the least. So we don't believe it to be a drone attack, but it is definitely curious, obviously a huge one. But unfortunately, let's take a look at that video.
And let's take a look at this really quickly, folks. This is apparently a fire that has broken out in the Kolpino area of St. Petersburg. Dang.
That's a pretty big accident, if that's an accident. I mean, it just literally started 30 minutes ago to an hour ago, so it's a fresh fire. So for it to spread that quickly and become a bonfire of that size, that's kind of interesting.
It is very interesting to say the least. Let's see, where is this exactly? There's no warning of a drone attack. The incident may be an accident. That's Kolpino right there. And I put the marker fairly close down to it at the start. But to bring us down into Kolpino, what is exactly on fire in this area? Because it looks to be a larger warehouse. It looks like there is a Logitera here. I'm not sure if that is the building that we're seeing in this video, though.
So go back to the video here for a second. There is a truck trailer sitting outside that has a logo on the side of it, right where that fire truck's sitting right there. Can you make that out what that says on the side of it? Because it has a logo on it.
Geyser. That's all I can read right there. That's geyser. It appears in Russian, because it's Geiser. A geyser. What company is called Geyser?
And it could just be a transportation company. It might not be the company that's actually there at that location, possibly. So it might not be useful, maybe. But that is, and I mean, for there to be trucking trailers sitting outside, it must have been some sort of warehouse of some sort. Here's something here. What is this?
This is the logistics facility that we keep looking at from satellite, and I'm trying to see if any of the trucks and their branding matches with what we just saw out there in the street. I don't think this is a match, though, because if we look right here, there's a larger clearing near to this building, and I don't see one here on satellite view. It looks to be mostly a treed sort of a road leading in and out of this area, so I think this is an unlikely possibility for the building that's on fire. But
Is there an ozone warehouse in here somewhere? Like, you might want to just type that in and see if you can spot one just by typing it in there on Google Maps and see if there is an ozone warehouse. Because if there is one there, that might be a very prime suspect.
oh no, we got it. We got the bingo right here. We could just see if it's on the bingo card. Let's see. Do we have a Kolpino or a St. Petersburg? Shishari, we have Shishari. That's the only one that appears to be of any notable size for the ozone company in the country. Maybe it's a Wildberries. I don't think there's a Wildberries facility here, though, because this looks to be really the only logistics facility in the area, which is a Lajari FM or Logiterra. I don't really see any other logistics buildings in the nearby area. We can see this RTS Colpino, which looks like it may be affiliated with the Wildberries company. It looks like it has a similar paint scheme to the building. And not quite. So that doesn't really look like a match either. I wish we could see the color of the wall of this building, because if we could, that would give us a very easy indicator to work off of to be able to find out what this is.
Yeah, the color is charbroiled.
Well, yeah, yeah, it's charbroiled now, but what was it before the fire started? That's what we really need to know. Sadly, folks, I don't think we'll be able to. Wait a minute. No, it's not that. It's not that. That's a mall. I just don't know what it is.
I think it's safe to say it's got to be a warehouse. Like, it has to be. It looks like it's in an industrial area from the looks of it. It's kind of a sparsely populated looking area where that warehouse is at. So it's got to be some warehouse of some sort. The only catch is, though, like I was saying, there's been no drones that have been seen going to attack that area. So it maybe might not have been a drone attack. It might just been a sabotage or maybe an accident. I'm really not buying the idea that it was an accident. That seems like way too big of an inferno to be an accident. That looks like something maybe intentional, possibly, but it's too early to tell.
I definitely agree. It's certainly not an accident. This is something deliberate, whatever it is, and however it started. But sadly, folks, I don't believe that we'll be able to get a better geolocation of this facility for now, outside the fact that it is in the Kolpino suburb of St. Petersburg. Apparently, though, we do understand that Putin was in the area and apparently crossed a bridge nearby, because there's a bridge called Fool's Bridge just up here to the north of Kolpino. So maybe that is a clue of some sort. It's just hard to say. But moving us on out of that breaking news of this humongous fire that just broke out in St. Petersburg, it's now time for us to actually get on into the rest of the breaking news that we have for the night, as we have been able to see major breaking news coming out from the entirety of the Russian Federation, the state of Ukraine, and largely the entirety of the world for the most part today. And we're going to be making sure to get into this, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. So moving us on into our largest story of the night, the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted another massive drone attack against the Russian Federation. This drone attack appears to have largely targeted, from what we're understanding right now, the southern Russian Don regions of the country, and we have not really been able to hear of or see any active reports of drone incursions or drone attacks conducted by the armed forces of Ukraine inside of central western Russia, or the Central Military District, or the Leningrad Military District, which is also the mystery behind the St. Petersburg fire of what the hell's going on up there, because we do not have any documented drone attacks that were heading that direction. However, when we move down into the south, we have seen major, humongous unbelievable attacks against largely every single military facility and critical electrical infrastructure site that could be seen within this region. Bringing us to the Krasnodar region, a report came out that a massive attack was underway throughout the entirety of the area, and we also were able to hear that there were explosions within destory in Crimea, which we believe this video is largely showing the explosions in destory inside of Crimea. But we were able to hear of the massive attack in Krasnodar. To bring you to our first clip of the larger Crimea Russian Dawn attack campaign conducted tonight, here is the clip.
Слышите?
You hear the air raid sirens going off.
А там похуй соседям, у них день рождения.
Wait, what did he say?
I like he said GD. I saw he spoke English there for a minute.
Hold up, folks, I gotta hear that again.
God damn it, блядь.
Is that like a Russian saying suka bliat?
Man, I think he just swore in English.
Man, I guess that's like the Russian equivalent of us English-speaking people saying suka bliat. Is that? Like, I guess. But that's kind of wild. I've never heard anyone do that before in Russia.
А там похуй соседям, у них день рождения. Вот что значит красно.
We hear the air raid sirens continuing to go off in the distance.
Вот что значит Краснодарский край. Где-то сирена. Бля, вот в такие моменты отвечаю, как будто в каком-то, блядь, фильме страшном. Сейчас, ну, как война начинается как будто. Это пиздец просто. Все повыбегали, соседи, слышно.
There you go. Turn the camera so we can see what's happening.
Yes, we do not want to see this guy. Oh, the camera's back to him.
Страшно, а когда же эта вся хуйня закончится? Ёбаный в рот. За себя как будто не страшно, нахуй. За детей страшно, блядь. За молодежь, за пацанов, которые...
Apparently this is a free therapy session for this guy.
Соседка съебывает в дом, нахуй. Да тебе не поможет, ёбаный. И навес свой тоже не поможет. Где-то сейчас, значит, что-то конкретно происходит.
Right now he's saying something along the lines of, back in school, everybody used to call me the Russian millennial, and I said, I will show you, and I created the band and sung a song, We are young, hey, ho! Honestly, the guy kind of does look like a Russian millennial, though.
I don't hear any explosions happening, but a ton of air raid sirens going off.
Yeah, quite a lot of air raid sirens. Maybe there's an explosion here at the end? Possibly?
Где-то в Южном у нас установлено, что так хорошо слышно. СМС-ка там тоже слышу.
We got 10 more seconds, folks. There's either an explosion or there isn't.
Все, давай, пошел я.
Well, there was no explosion, but air raid sirens certainly did sound. Now, while that clip didn't show us any explosions and just let us hear the sound of the air raid sirens, explosions were reported in both Yeysk and also the town of Primorsko-Akhtarsk within the Krasnodar Oblast. Both of these cities generally serve as Russian aviation centers, with the city of Yeysk operating Russian drone aviation within the area of this abandoned airfield, and we also understand that some limited Russian maritime aviation is also operated out of this area, including some of their maritime patrol aircraft of the Russian Naval Air Arm, and we also understand that further south near to Primorsko-Akhtarsk is another airfield which also operates Russian Su-25 aircraft and other aircraft of Russian close air support wings that have been operating out of this airfield for some time, which is believed to be a safer basing location for the aircraft since it's not in Crimea, and Crimea has become practically uninhabitable for all Russian armed forces that are not the army, because the Ukrainian armed forces have continuously attacked and destroyed most aircraft at the air bases and most ships in the ports inside of Crimea. We were able to see the clip coming out of Primorsko-Akhtarsk showing that apparently the Ukrainian General Staff stated that additional analysis confirmed the damage from the August 20th strike at the Primorsko-Akhtarsk airfield, an area in Russia's Krasnodar region. One Noboy radar station and 18 warehouse buildings used to store drones were damaged in the course of the Ukrainian attack within that area. And the city of Yeysk, active hits were seen over the course of this night, which have resulted in major fires breaking out near to the area of the Yeysk military airfield and also the oil loading facilities inside of the town of Yeysk. We actually got to see the oil fires from the oil facilities up close in this brief clip right here.
Also, by the way, before we move on from this right here, go jump to the NASA firm satellite real quick. Let's go check that area in St. Petersburg one more time, because I'm seeing people say that there's apparently a fire signature in the area of Kolpino. So let's see if there is one yet. Do you spot one in the area?
Having just refreshed, I do not see one in the Colpino area at the moment, unfortunately. Not that I'm saying that they're wrong, it may just be that our firms is not updated yet with the information.
Interesting. I'll keep an eye out for it and keep double checking. Some people are saying they see it, and some people are saying they don't see it. On our end, it has not updated to show a fire in that area yet, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. But for right now, I'm not seeing it either on my end either. So we'll have to see if we can confirm that.
So moving us on from that little bit of an update from the firm satellite, we've also been able to see the Ukrainian drone attacks that have been conducted against Krasnodar and Crimea overnight from the perspective of the Ukrainian armed forces. We'll be showing a brief amount of this clip as it's mostly just drones zooming in on a target, then hitting it and the fires ensuing afterwards, but it does give us an insight into the type of targets that were hit by the Ukrainian armed forces in their attacks within Crimea and also the Krasnodar region. When you see that this large substation, which we actually reported several days ago, was in fact hit by the Ukrainian drone attacks conducted on the 20th of August. Those attacks were incredibly significant and caused a major amount of damage, and we understand this footage here is actually showing us a part of the attack on that major substation, which is responsible for providing the majority of the power from the mainland of Russia into Crimea.
You know what's interesting about this is Ukraine's now started expanding these power strikes, not just from Crimea, but now they're also doing that inside mainland Russia too, near the Krasnodar area, I believe. So it's interesting they've sort of expanded that into mainland Russia. Now, I don't think they're going to have much success with that. Like, mainland Russia, that's a huge grid to try to take down that entire thing. But they definitely have had success with Crimea, and they'll probably continue to wipe out that power grid because there's only two main power plants that's on the Crimean Peninsula. One of them's been hit and severely damaged. I think it might be temporarily offline. And then there's one more that Ukraine hasn't taken out yet that would cause a complete total blackout across Crimea. So I don't know about the mainland ones, though.
From what we know, this electrical substation they were targeting in Krasnodar actually was a feeder substation that fed electricity across the Kerch Strait into Crimea, so it doesn't look like it's an attempt to take out the electrical grid in mainland Russia. It looks more so like it's trying to knock out the connections that mainland Russia has to Crimea. So that looks to be generally the way that they're gearing the attacks right now, because I would also agree, and I think the Ukrainians understand, that knocking out a national grid the size of Russia's would be very difficult to do, and while they might be able to intermittently knock out regional or oblast-wide grids, that would only be for an intermittent amount of time and would not be permanent or indefinite like the Ukrainian blackouts and power outages have become, even at this point, with some of the electrical infrastructure still operational inside of the Kerch Strait area and also within Crimea.
I would say so. Also, I have located those fires, by the way. The NASA firm satellite information is updated and is showing fires around St. Petersburg. As many people in the chat have noted, it appears to be the Azhora industrial site near St. Petersburg, near Kolpino, that is apparently the site where the fire is taking place. So it does appear we were correct. It is an industrial zone that's apparently on fire, and it could be a warehouse that's on fire that we speculated as well. So see if you can zoom in and spot those fires now, because they are definitely there. I can see them on my map.
Dang, I still don't see them on mine. For some reason, mine's not
I think you got the
happy.
timeline. You got the timeline feature activated, it looks like.
Okay, let's see if this changes it. Why in the world did it have that on? I never turned that on. It still isn't showing up on my end, but maybe it will eventually. I have a feeling I know which area you're talking about, though. I'll zoom in on it and just ask you. It is this area right here north of Kolpino, this larger industrial sector.
Let's see here. No, it's not that one. I don't know why it's not showing up on yours. It's kind of hard to say where it is right here without exactly being able to point it out. So let's see here. There's only two locations with fires, and let me see which one it is here. There appears to be maybe a landfill that could have a fire on it, and there's also one other fire as well. Let's see here. Sadly, I don't have any way to get that to you without updating on your end, so I'm not sure why it's not showing it.
So is it near Kolpino?
It seems to be outside of Colpino by a little bit. It seems to be down south of it, but there's no way I'm able to tell you where that's at. It's too specific.
Damn, that's unfortunate. We'll try and update y'all folks for everybody here soon once my firm's updates. For some reason though, folks, my firm's is not happy and does not want to update right now. So hopefully we'll have that information coming out here very soon. But we'll just have to wait for my firms to be able to catch up to speed. Moving us out of that, though, the Russian fuel shortage and also the Ukrainian attacks that continue against the Russian Federation have seen that the damage at Samara is still burning down the ozone, which was hit yesterday. We saw further clips today showing the fires continuing to burn at the ozone facility in Chabayevsk in the Samara region in this clip right here. Oh, it's a new drone arrival. Free delivery, same-day shipping.
Охуеть.
Moving us on from that clip and on into our next clip, we also...
So hold on just a second. Actually, let's see here. Thanks to Miss Disa, we have a Twitter post here apparently showing the area that apparently caught on fire. And also I got the coordinates too on NASA firms. So we can double check both of those real quick and see if that is the location that we're looking at. So let me send this over Discord so that we can get this pulled up here. So here's the Twitter link to it right there. Let's see here. Let's see. Let me go grab the... Yeah, let me go grab this again. Hold on a second. Here we go. So there's the link right there. That goes to the Twitter. And I'll double check those coordinates here in a second.
Oh, this is the facility that we were looking at first.
Yeah, it appears to be. They've got an image of a street view showing the location, and they've also got the picture of the fire. I'll be honest, I'm either their geolocation skills are extremely impressive, or they're doing a little bit of guesswork here, because I'm really not sure how they came up with that geolocation is by looking at this image right here. Are you able to determine how they came up with that?
Let me see here if I can, so that way we can do some double checking on this. So they're saying it's this facility here. Let me see here. Yeah, so it is that facility. They have an older or a newer, I'm not really sure which, I think it's a newer satellite image of this than we're getting on Google, because it looks like this building behind it was abandoned and may have been demolished afterwards, and the new building further north is the one that's still standing. This could also suggest that the ground view is a little bit different in the area than what we're seeing on Google Street View. And let me see what the Google Street View is showing us for a year. 2021. So it is about 5 years old. So this could be different. And let me see here if they have it's light green and dark green. Light green. Yeah, that actually does match up as far as the paint job on the wall. So that looks to be the same building.
So what is the building? They're saying, well, what is it? It's a storage location or something? Or is it a transportation hub or something?
So Hatoke is saying, and from what I could find as well, it's the Lochester Secure Storage Warehouse. It's a 79,000 square meter facility used to store goods and cargo, as well as their receipt, unloading, placement, picking, labeling, packaging, and subsequent shipment. So it's largely a distribution warehouse run by a third-party contractor outside of Wildberries or Ozone, if we're considering those the primary shippers inside of Russia. And we can actually see here that it is the Logiterra facility, or the Logo Park Colpino Logiterra, or another logo name for it is the Logarif FM.
That's kind of interesting, because I was expecting maybe Ukraine would start just hitting the ozone facilities like consistently, one after the other, and start taking those out in a massive cascade. But it looks like they might be expanding if this is indeed an attack, because right now we don't know if this is an attack or an accident or what this is, because we didn't hear of the drones going toward this warehouse when the fire broke out. So maybe Ukraine, if it is an attack, is expanding to pretty much any distribution warehouse that they can get their hands on. But right now the details are sparse, so I'm kind of guessing at that a little bit. But if it is, though, I mean, that's a big shift.
Well, it is fascinating because we didn't hear of a Ukrainian drone attack even being detected in the area, and yet it looks like the entire width of the building is currently on fire, which is usually indicative of a Ukrainian drone attack, because usually Ukrainians will use a number of drones to strike down the entire roof of the building on its longest length to be able to make sure that the fire is spread evenly and burns the facility out uniformly. And that's what we're largely seeing from this fire. So the signature is almost identical to a Ukrainian drone attack, but we have not heard of a Ukrainian drone attack being conducted in the area, any eyewitness reports of explosions within the area, or anything else for that matter. I mean, it's kind of a bit of a mystery, folks, as to how this building has gone up in flames. I would say it's highly likely a drone attack, but once again, we have no evidence or proof to really lean into that idea and say that we have receipts to confirm it is a drone attack right now. So really the story is going to take a little bit more maturing or development for us to be able to see what is actually going on here. All we know is that this giant Logistera secure storage warehouse is burning to the ground right now. It's absolutely humongous. About, I think, half the size of the Koladino facility that burned down in Moscow a few days ago. And I would believe that it's a drone attack, but we can't confirm that exactly
Oh.
just yet.
Now, something interesting, I'm seeing a couple of people say this. They're saying maybe it was Ukraine finally testing one of those ballistic missiles, the FP7 or the FP9 that they've been working on developing. That is possible, but it's impossible to say that with certainty unless we see the actual impact footage so we can hear the noise of the projectile coming in and also how large the explosion was, because we can't tell if there was a single impact point or multiple impact points based on the aftermath footage that we currently have. We can't really determine that. So we'll have to wait and see. But I did hear that the companies producing that were saying that sooner or later they were going to do a field test on Russia with those missiles, and maybe this is a test of it possibly, but it's just too early to tell.
It could maybe be one, but once again, folks, we don't have any proof yet. So we can all speculate, and at this moment, folks, any speculation is not wrong. It might actually end up being right. It's just that we don't really have any proof or any information to say what it is. If anything, it's probably going to be, I believe, if we're talking about the long range one, the FP. Let me make sure I'm saying this correctly, because I think the. Okay, so it would be the FP9. The FP9 is basically Ukraine's version of an Iskander missile. To show you right here, here's the profile of the FP9, and then let me show you all an Iskander next to it. So let me see here, and here's an Iskander that's used by the Russian Federation. Almost an exact same design. It's a slight development, and this is also apparently where the Grim or the Hrom missile development cycle picked up and took off, was with the Firepoint company, which then redesignated it to an FP9. But largely, it's just a Ukrainian Iskander missile. It is possible that the Ukrainians may have used one against Russia, but we're not entirely sure yet, and we'll have to wait for further information, either to come out from the Ukrainians confirming they used an FP9, or from the Russians claiming that the Ukrainians fired an FP9 at St. Petersburg and hit it. It is within range of an FP9, but beyond that, it's still a mystery what could have set this facility on fire. It could have been arson, a saboteur attack, which would also be arson. It could have been a missile attack, or it could have been a drone attack. It could be any one of those four, and we wouldn't really know at the moment. But a lot of people are talking about the situation inside of Moscow, which I do want to make sure to move us on into. But to round out one last clip of footage from the ozone facility, we were able to see the fire right here, and we also were able to hear and see one of the first impacts on the facility yesterday in this clip right here, archival one that just came out today.
Он сейчас прямо на нас вниз
We
полетит.
hear the
ебать.
drone coming in.
It's a roadside attraction.
А когда он снижаться
Not like
будет?
our was just running through the middle of an active highway.
Ah, yes.
And then it comes, блядь.
Oh, look, there's hell. It's already burning.
Oh, look! What a
Охуеть.
pleasure. Oh, твою мать, блядь.
Главак полетел.
Oh, no.
Охуеть.
And there it goes. Impact.
Oh. Now I understand why they call it ozone, because with all that fire and all that smoke right there, the ozone layer is suffering, it's coughing, it's crying out for help, and it's not getting any.
It's certainly not. Like, not in Russia, for sure, these days. So moving us on, finally, folks, out of Samara, and on up into Moscow. A lot of y'all will have heard and know the reports here on the channel that the Russian economy is doing poorly, the fuel situation is abysmal, and the Ukrainians are now causing attacks that are, in short, going to completely destroy the Russians economically, militarily, and logistically at some point in the near future. The Russians are apparently starting to understand that this is a pretty bad situation. And as a result of this, Vladimir Putin has came out today, and I'm not going to play the clip because we're not entirely sure what the copyright situation is on it, but according to Putin, in his direct quote, he stated that Ukraine opened this Pandora's box itself. Well then, it should expect a response targeting the most vulnerable sectors of its economy, which frankly are already on their last legs. This also applies, by the way, to agricultural production, whose exports are a major source of revenue for Ukraine. Further details about the statement went on to say that Putin said that Russia would retaliate against Ukrainian strikes on refineries, warehouses, and other economic infrastructure by targeting Ukraine's most sensitive economic sectors. He accused Kyiv of opening a Pandora's box with its deep strike campaign, and Putin also dismissed concerns that attacks disrupting Ukrainian grain exports could create global supply shortages, arguing that Russia could replace lost Ukrainian supplies with their own. So largely the Russians are saying that they are going to be conducting what we would describe as a criminal campaign against the state of Ukraine, because they are not attacking any targets in Ukraine, according to this statement, with a military justification behind them. They're just attacking civilian targets in general as a reprisal for what the Ukrainians have done, attacking Russian oil refineries, warehouses which the Ukrainians allege are being used for military logistics, and also other economic infrastructure that has been used by the Russians to further or continue their war effort, usually including port facilities. Now the Russians are announcing that in response to the Ukrainian campaigns, which always announce a military justification to them, that the Russians in turn are going to just destroy anything and everything to destroy any life left in Ukraine, and to also possibly starve out the Ukrainians at the civilian level because of these strikes and what may come to follow. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this sort of a statement from the Russian Federation, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so Russia basically is saying that they're doing a doomsday plan here. They say Ukraine's opened Pandora's box with the recent attacks on the grain inside of Russia and also the warehouses like ozone and also wild berries. And now we're seeing the Russian government threaten civilian strikes, which, by the way, they've been doing already. That's nothing new, so it's not like it's new information. I mean, Russia's been doing that for years. So, what are your thoughts? 43% said Ukraine will defend perfectly fine amidst this brand new escalation by the Putin regime, while 37% said it will be a challenge for Ukraine to defend against it, and 11% said Ukraine will be overwhelmed very soon, unfortunately. And I would say this, there is some hope on the horizon for Ukraine to have a fix for their lack of interceptor missiles. We did see today that France is going to be handing over some interceptor missiles to Ukraine to defend the capital city of Kyiv, which is desperately needed because right now Patriot missiles are extremely low. And in fact, I would say Ukraine has run out of those to a large degree. And you really can't count on the United States coming to the rescue of Ukraine because for whatever reason, they're not wanting to hand them over, even though they claim they have plenty of Patriots. They're not handing any over to Ukraine at all. So at least France is stepping up. That's a good stopgap measure. But I would say what Russia's doing now and declaring, like I said, they've already been doing it. So it's not going to really change much. But what this does indicate, though, is Putin is getting so frustrated and angry that Ukraine is having such success with the strikes in the grain in Novorossiysk and so many other areas and oil sites inside of Russia that he's now lashing out in anger and saying this. Not that it's going to really change anything, but it shows the internal state of Putin's mindset that he is getting literally fed up to the umpteenth degree at this point about these strikes that Ukraine's conducting. So I'm with the 37%. I think it will be a challenge for Ukraine to defend against, but it's not over with. It's not like a lost cause or something like that. Certainly not. Ukraine will persevere, but it will be a tough winter, to say the least. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would be with the 37% as well. I would love to have the optimism that the 43% has that the Ukrainians will defend from this perfectly fine and swat away these sorts of attacks. But unfortunately, folks, we have to accept the reality of the situation in Ukraine. Ukraine needs large caliber missile interceptors to be able to operate their hybrid drone defense and missile defense air defense network that they have. We understand that they have absolutely no Patriot interceptors to work with whatsoever. And that's leaving a giant gaping hole in their air defense where if a drone is fired and a cruise missile is fired, they can easily shoot those down by about 90% interception rates. If a ballistic missile is fired, it is near a 100% chance that ballistic missile is going to be making it through to its target. And that is a significant issue that the Ukrainians cannot overcome without some form of foreign support. While they're working on a development program to be able to try and get a large caliber air defense missile of their own and to produce their own, they still don't have one, and they're still going to rely on some sort of a comparable foreign alternative, either the Iris-T from Germany, the SAMP-T from France, or the Patriot Mim-104 from the United States of America. And they can't really get any of those. The Germans don't really have a lot of Iris-Ts to hand over. The French are trying to do everything they can, but SAMP-T systems are not as numerous as the Patriot systems inside of the state of Ukraine. And the United States of America is not willing to hand over licensed production rights to the state of Ukraine for no good reason. They're also not willing to provide Patriots usable to the state of Ukraine for really no good reason. And also on top of that, they aren't willing to do anything really for the state of Ukraine here in the U.S. government currently. They're more willing to let the Ukrainians get screwed over than to actually try and help out a common ally against a common enemy of the United States of America. So I would say, sadly, this is going to be difficult because the Russians fire ballistic missiles at these facilities, which they most likely are. The Ukrainians really have no effective way to actually intercept those missiles, meaning that every missile fired is almost going to be a guaranteed hit. Hopefully, we'll find a way that they can defend against it. Maybe the French can provide more SAMP-T air defense interceptors than they have so far, and also missiles to be able to see that the Ukrainians can defend, because we're hearing positive developments about that today. But outside of that, there's really no effective ballistic missile defense to speak of, and that is still the Achilles heel of the Ukrainian air defense system as it stands right now. So I hope that does address that poll the best I can. But to give you all a little bit of positive news to talk about after my own assessment on the poll and Matthew's assessment, the French are working to get more missile interceptors to the state of Ukraine, as Macron did announce that there will be a new delivery of the interceptors to Ukraine, and that the French could provide Ukraine with additional missiles for air defense systems to strengthen the protection of its skies against Russian attacks. And Macron also announced the expansion of military support for Ukraine and said that France would continue pressing Russia until Moscow agrees to end the war. Macron, Merz, and the new British Prime Minister Burnham will hold another meeting of the coalition of the willing, and it will take place on the Ukrainian Independence Day as they try and figure out what to do about the ailing interceptor situation that Ukraine is continuing to face. This entire interceptor problem, by the way, could easily be overcome if the United States was willing to hand over licensed production rights to the state of Ukraine. However, while the President of the United States originally announced that he was going to do that, he then announced that he actually didn't trust the state of Ukraine well enough to give them licensed production rights for Patriot interceptors. Mind you, we trusted them enough to use Patriot missile systems, both the transport-erector launchers, the battery fire commands, and also the missiles themselves, and for them to be stored in the state of Ukraine over the course of the past 4 years of the war. However, for some reason, the President of the United States now has decided that the Ukrainians cannot be trusted with a missile system, a missile interceptor system, that they have been operating for nearly 4 straight years at this point, without any real problems or flaws that we know of publicly, where the Ukrainians have either handed away intelligence, knowledge, and technological secrets of the system, or have ended up misusing or abusing the systems in some extent. We do not know of any sorts of violations in that regard, and for some reason, the United States just isn't willing, for some reason, to give them to Ukraine because there's a security problem. I don't see a single security problem, and to be entirely honest with y'all, I think the U.S. administration has a personal bone to pick, or some sort of a personal vendetta against the state of Ukraine at this point, and a large amount of our allies, and that's why we're seeing that a lot of them are getting screwed hand over fist by the United States of America, including the state of Ukraine. It's just because the president has some sort of a personal vendetta against the Ukrainians for really no apparent reason that I can see. Because if the Ukrainian, once again, folks, if the Ukrainians have operated this missile system and the missiles, which have been stored in Ukraine for 3 years, why in the world would we ever think that they would misabuse licensed production rights? If they wanted to, they could have taken a MIM 104 Patriot missile apart completely, and they could have reverse engineered one and built one entirely on their own without the USSA at all, regardless of the consequences, yet they never did, and they still haven't. So why in the world would we believe they're going to misabuse that now?
I think there's a bigger problem at play here. There's always like a personal like friction between the U.S. president and Ukraine. There's always been a friction there, but I don't think that's the reason why he's saying no to them getting the interceptors or license producing them right now. I don't think that's the main reason. I think the problem is Ukraine is so resourceful and also very MacGyver-minded to a large degree. I think a lot of these companies are worried that if they license produce or allow Ukraine to license produce those missiles, that maybe Ukraine might improve upon them, and then they have no reason whatsoever to buy those interceptor missiles from that point forward. I think that is a huge part of the rationale behind not allowing them to produce those, is because they might lose intellectual property in those missiles, and then obviously their value goes down tremendously.
But I mean, it's not really the case with that, though, because if I remember correctly, I think a large amount of countries in the NATO alliance license produced the missiles, and if the Ukrainians did get license production rights, that's only an ability to produce the missiles on license. If the companies at some point in the future revoke the licensing rights, or the United States do, the Ukrainians either have to stop production of the Patriots entirely and pretty much burn all of the technological information they have on those missiles, or they're going to face the wrath of the entire U.S. defense industry, no longer selling any equipment to them whatsoever, and what they have now is all they'll get. So there's always major repercussions behind an action like that, where the Ukrainians might just undercut them and do them even better. That would lead to that not really being an issue, at least as far as I could see it personally.
I would have to disagree because I mean, you got to imagine it's like you know how China they look for our technology quite a lot. Like they want to replicate everything. They want to steal IP all day long. I'm not saying Ukraine is thieves, but I mean if Ukraine happens to run across technology and they know how it works, and we've already seen how fast they've been accelerating their drone production and technology, then I would suspect they would do the same thing with these interceptors. Would be my guess.
Maybe, but really I think the question is more so though, is it really the interceptors that China would want, or would it be the radars? Because we know that Russian and Chinese radars are nowhere close to being as sensitive or accurate as American-made air defense radar systems are, because we've seen that the detection and interception rates for the S-300 and the S-400 and the HQ-9 and the HQ-11 and 19 air defense systems from China are extremely low, if not non-existent, against American air forces and American missiles, like, for example, in Iran or Venezuela. So would it really be the missile that they'd want? Because I'm sure, to be honest with you, I think the HQ-9, the 11s, and the 19s, as far as the missile types in China, I have a feeling that they're pretty decent missiles. It's just that the radar systems that are a part of that air defense package are so crude and unrefined that they can never really get the full potential out of the missiles because they can never detect an air target to shoot down with them in the first place. So since Ukraine already has, I think it's something like 11 Patriot batteries in the country, which means they also have 11 operational radars, wouldn't the security risk far more be in line with it being the radar system that could be given over to the Chinese, or secrets of the radar system could be given over to the Chinese for them to refine theirs, than the missiles? Because I feel like the Chinese would be after that sort of tech more fervently than a missile, and the Ukrainians have at least 11 of these radar systems that they could abuse, kind of like a Patriot missile.
They just want it all. Like, if they can get every piece and scrap of that technology, every country on the planet would love to have their hands on all that technology. So it doesn't matter if it's like the radar system, the missile itself, the interceptor. It doesn't really matter what it is. As long as they can get their hands on it and find out how it works and how it ticks, it allows them to build upon it without having to spend all that money on R&D. It also allows them to reverse engineer it to know how to defeat the missile. And there's a whole bunch of security risks with that. So I understand why they're hesitant to let Ukraine simply license produce it. But the catch is this, though, is the U.S. going to let all these civilians start dying in mass because Russia's attacking civilian population centers by the dozens? Or are we going to take the risk and help protect innocent life? It's like, what's more important to the United States? To protect the missile where nobody can ever see how it's made exactly down to the, nuts and bolts of it, or to let, thousands and thousands of people get killed by the Russians? That's a tough one.
Let's say I want to pull this up really quickly to Patriot missiles. Let me see here. I want to see if anyone has the rights. So outside of the United States, the only two countries that currently have licensed production rights are the Japanese and the Germans, which also produce Patriot missiles inside their own countries as well. So if it's like, we don't want people to know how the sausage is made, it's like, well, Japan knows how the sausage is made. We know that the Chinese are all over the Japanese like white on rice all the time with their spy agencies. And we also would know that the Germans are, pretty infested with the FSB. So if they can produce the missiles, that's fine. Why in the world would Ukraine be a problem? At least in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's always a thing. There could be some of that friction that you were talking about. That could be an extra added layer to it. But I would say, no offense, by the way. Like, obviously, I support Ukraine. I support their fight against freedom, or for freedom, not against freedom, obviously, but for it. I would say this, though. Since they're in an active war and they're changing out people constantly, there is a bit of a higher risk. Ukraine's obviously not as stable as a country that's at peace, like Japan or, Germany. So there's always a higher risk that maybe somebody could, like, let some of the information out or leak something or sell the data. There's always a possibility that could happen. But I don't think it's as big as a problem as they're making it out to be, personally.
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's always a small risk that comes with those sorts of things like that. But I think the reward for our side would far outweigh the risks, especially knowing that the Patriot interceptors are running low globally. We just need them in larger numbers. And if the Ukrainians can be removed from the supply chain issue by allowing them to create their own independent supply chain for Patriots, then that relieves a lot of pressure off of us to be trying to find and continually provide them to the Ukrainians. But beyond that, though, a lot of people are talking about the strikes being conducted by both Ukraine and Russia on power infrastructure, the agricultural industry, and also civil infrastructure. And a lot of people are wondering what is going to be coming as an end result of these sorts of major strikes that both sides are conducting against critical and sensitive economic industries and also utilities. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that right now, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so right now the trajectory that we're seeing is Ukraine and Russia are ramping up their attacks against, more civilian-oriented targets for the most part. We're seeing Ukraine hit the wildberries, the ozone facilities, grain ports, and also seaports inside of Russia. And they've just started doing that. Russia's been doing that for ages. It's nothing new for the Russians, but Ukraine has just started getting on that bandwagon a little bit because I think they're starting to realize that they kind of really have to fight fire with fire to a certain degree. Now, obviously, is that ideal? Not really, but I think Ukraine's decided they have to take that extra step. So, I guess they're leveling the playing field is one way to look at it. But we're seeing the power, agriculture, and civilian infrastructure start to get hit left and right from both sides. So what happens next? 46% said uncontrollable escalation and significant danger is right around the corner. Perhaps maybe a very unfortunate escalation. It could get really out of control. 26% said nothing much really, just more civilian suffering is going to come out of it. And 22% said probably a fast Russian collapse will come out of it during the winter between the gas shortages and everything else that Russia is dealing with currently. And I would say that the path they're on right now, I'll be totally honest, it's a complete total war right now is what they're both engaging in. It's on a very dangerous path, I will say that. I'm hoping that Russia collapses before Putin comes around to making a decision about, escalating to something like nuclear weapons. That's my hope. I'm hoping that the gas shortage causes the logistics to collapse and therefore the Russian civilians are, hurting so bad that they feel a need to actually take political action against the Putin regime. That's the best case scenario in my opinion, because if that does not happen, we could be looking at either a major NATO escalation by the Putin regime, or we could be looking at perhaps maybe something escalatory toward, strikes on Kyiv government sites or perhaps nuclear weapons at some point later on down the road. Not tomorrow, obviously, but, maybe a year or two down the road. So that I'm saying I'm with the 47%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll be with 47% as well. It is leading the Russians into a corner where they're going to have to lash out violently at some point, possibly. Based off these actions, of course, they're unavoidable and they have to be done, but it is going to produce some very concerning results as to what the Russians might be doing here in the near future, as in regards to where their position is and how they're going to be trying to claw their way back out of the grave that they've kind of fallen into at this point from the war. But moving us on out of that poll, I've seen a lot of people in the chat. Actually, it's apparently an interesting discussion to many people talking about whether or not the Ukrainians should have licensing rights to produce Patriot interceptors and the kind of security risk that may pose. The thing that I have to say, folks, to add a little bit more to it, is that a lot of people are saying that the state of Ukraine cannot have the ability to do that because it could give away state secrets, and the Ukrainians are just too unstable to be given that kind of access to how the Patriot missile works and how it operates. But I have to say this, folks, the difference between manufacturing the missile and operating the missile is a little bit, but it's not as great as a lot of people would believe. Because if y'all don't know, the Patriot operators of the MIM-104 system in Ukraine have manuals that they carry around, kind of like this one right here. This is actually FM 4415-1, which is the 1987 edition of the Operations and Training for the Patriot Interceptor System. This is an incredibly old document, and it's been declassified by the Department of the Army quite a while ago, but there are modern versions of this manual for the MIM-104 Patriot system. It's more advanced in modern radar systems. It's a radar and detection and target acquisition systems inside of the command module, and also how the PAC-3 missiles and the PAC-2 missiles work and operate on the field, letting them know what kind of targets are interceptable, what kind of targets are not, how the targeting and acquisition computers work, how the radar systems operate. All of that's in these manuals, and also technical assistance has to be provided as well to these Patriots in the field, which means that the technical manuals are also provided to be able to conduct repairs and to also let them know what kind of systems are inside of the Patriot as far as the computer and the missiles, which then also lets you know the capabilities of the system. Meaning that if you get any one of the modern classified field manuals for the Patriot, you basically have the production sauce in hand. You don't have the knowledge of how the assembly line works to build a Patriot missile, but you have every single detail that the Russians would need to know to understand their vulnerabilities. What can the radar do and what can it not do? What can the targeting and acquisition computers do and not do? What can the missile do or not do? You get all that information once you get the technical manuals, and the technical manuals have been in Ukraine for years, and so far we haven't seen that that's posed any issue, which is already a high amount of security risk that's been given to them, and so far we've seen that it hasn't gone astray. So if that hasn't gone astray, my personal opinion is that it's not that much of an issue to give that to them. Besides, folks, we're moving on to a whole new system. We're retiring the MIM-104s, and we're moving on towards the THAAD as our new and more advanced air defense system here in the United States. So the MIM-104 Patriot already has a replacement that is on the field and operational, and the MIM-104 Patriot is an air defense system of bygone years. So generally, as far as the United States is concerned, it doesn't really have much of a national security edge to it anymore because the THAAD's on the field, and we can start giving away licensing rights, in my opinion, to the state of Ukraine without a significant amount of risk being involved in that sort of a situation. But moving us on out of that, it is now time for us to move on and out of Russia for a brief moment and down into the Middle East to get through our brief update of what the situation is looking like down there. Before we get to that, though, I do have to say a humongous thanks to everybody who has been watching so far over the course of this night, because we have had a humongous amount of people here. We've had 17.2 thousand people here at the peak, and 71,000 people have watched this stream in the first hour. I've got to say that we are entirely honored and extremely appreciative to know that so many of y'all have continued to watch this channel throughout the years and are here tonight. I hope that our news coverage has been incredibly good, our analysis has been decent, and that our jokes, although not made a lot during the start of the stream, are all right whenever they come around. Before we move on into the rest of this news, however, I do want to take a brief moment to get to talk to a couple of y'all. As a big thanks for y'all spending your time here, and we're going to be getting 3 questions from the chat, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news from the night, starting in the Middle East, and then working our way back into Europe and also the ongoing war in Ukraine. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping to our first 3 super chats of the night, our first one's going to go to BC Skyman, who puts in a $50 support combined amongst the super stickers, and thank you very much, BC, for that support right there. He's saying in the chat right there how apparently his wife went to a Ukrainian party over there where he lives, which I'll keep that part quiet in case he doesn't want me saying that on the air, by the way, but it is very cool, by the way, BC Skyman. There's actually Ukrainians that live around Salt Lake City, I found out, around the area. I don't know if they have get-togethers or not, but I've seen a few living around from here to here and here and yonder and stuff like that, and some Ukrainian flags flying around. But there seems to be a pretty large population of Ukrainians where you're living as well. Also, by the way, hopefully y'all can't hear that dog pound that's going on outside. It sounds like there's a dog herd. You can't? Okay, good deal. It's like I think there's a dog fight happening outside. But anyways, thank you, BC Skyman. And if we're sir, what say you?
And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you for the support, BC Skyman. And I gotta say that folks like you help us to keep this channel running. And also, that's really cool to hear. If y'all don't know, folks, Ukrainian Americans make up 1 million citizens of the United States, and this is actually the population distribution of them, according to the census data. And it's actually kind of interesting to look at, because there is a humongous concentration of them in the New England area, mostly around New York City, and also New Jersey. So you have a high chance of running into a Ukrainian American if you're in New Jersey. You also have a high chance of running into them if you're in Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, or Chicago, and also, interesting enough, Atlanta, Georgia to an extent, and also Miami and Tampa. I wouldn't expect that to be where Ukrainians would live, but apparently they live down in Miami and Tampa as well. But that's actually kind of neat to look at here and get to see the statistics on that. And I also got to say, really cool to hear that your wife actually went to a little Ukrainian shindig. And I got to thank you greatly for the support, BC Scammon, and helping us to keep this channel on air, keep it running, and keep reporting the news each and every single day. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would never be able to make this channel possible, keep it running, and be able to hear cool things like that. I think that's actually really neat. I know that generally a lot of people in America do not associate with a traditional culture at this point. Many people just view themselves as Americans. I think I'm one of them myself. But I always find the cultural sorts of events and holidays and festivals that people bring from the countries that they've immigrated from around the world interesting, you know, like Burns Night for the Scots, and also all the other ones that people may know of that I cannot think of to speak of here on air. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Con45, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Con, for that 50 as well. And we do appreciate that. And Con said, Medyar will destroy a lot of power substation in Russia this winter during blizzards, along with having a fuel crisis in Russia. And I don't believe Russia will be able to conduct a 2027 spring offensive, and Russia's economy is in worse shape than reported.
And I got to thank you massively for the support, Con45. And I think the Russians are in a very difficult economic shape. I don't want to say, though, that they're going to be done for and cooked, because we have been saying that quite a lot over the prior years, and they usually end up surviving a little bit longer than we think. So I'm still thinking that they might even survive through the winter and into the next year. It's just a little bit unclear as to how much longer they'll survive in the next year. And that is the question to me, because if I was speaking honestly, I would think they probably end up collapsing sometime around the end of this year. But then, it's like, well, we've been thinking that quite a lot on our predictions in the past, and, it never ends up coming into fruition. So then I have to push the timetable farther back than what I would be thinking and go, maybe it'll be a little bit later. But still, I would say that they are definitely having a major problem with the fuel crisis, the ozone and wildberries attacks that have been conducted, and also the crippling issues that they're having at their ports, where they really can't import or export anything for that matter because of the damage to the port facilities within Western Russia. So I would definitely agree they are having quite the tough time. It's just hard to really approximate when they're going to finally be on the down and out and done for. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the last one of the segment goes to 805 Drifter. And thank you very much for the 50 as well. And very generous support. And we do appreciate that. He said, hey guys, I love the content. And please, everybody, just vote in November. We're informed, but too many voters are not. And every vote counts. I don't care who you vote for. Anytime an informed voter votes, it's a good thing. And also, that's something we can agree with. We're not political here on the channel. We don't take a side, this side versus that side. But that's a good statement across the board right there. Like, please do not make your voting decisions off what you see on TikTok or Instagram or something like that. Like, actually research what they're saying. And also, look at their track record. Are they liars? Do they usually tell the truth? Because, people can say all kinds of great stuff in the beginning, and then all of a sudden they flip a switch, and later they're completely different, which we've seen pretty much constantly these days. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I would definitely agree with that 805 Drifter. And I would also have to say, folks, you have to be very careful about the people you vote these days. Don't just look at their track record, look at what they're saying, and also, very importantly, look at who's actually funding their campaign, which is a very important deal. That's never shown publicly, and some people joke here in America they ought to pass a congressional act that makes the Congress members have to wear the logos of the companies that have basically funded their campaign on their suit like a NASCAR race driver. I would say that that should be done, but sadly it's not. So you really have to look into who's actually funding their campaign, because certain groups are going to fund campaigns where a politician is going to say one thing to get elected and then do the totally opposite once they get put into the office. And also another thing I would say, folks, is that in regards to the situation that the United States currently faces right now, I would not vote for a soul, in my personal opinion, based on domestic political issues. If you have somebody that's running in your constituency right now that's going to be up for election in the midterms, and they're talking about nothing but the culture war, about, I stand for all of the liberal or conservative culture war values, don't vote for them. You need to vote for somebody who's running more so down the middle and is more focused on the administrative side of things, and also especially on foreign policy. We need people in the Congress who are heavily involved in foreign policy. Just to tell you all the logic of why I'm saying that, folks, the culture war stuff is never going to go anywhere. If you're voting for someone because they say the evil libs or the evil MAGA people are doing this and that, that's never going to get anywhere. They're going to gridlock every single time in Congress, and that means nothing. What you need to look at, though, is what the foreign policy side is. If they say, screw everyone in the world and we're going to screw every one of our allies over, I wouldn't vote for that person. I don't care what party affiliation they're with. If you hear them say, we're going to support all of our traditional allies and try and grow our relations as much as I can as a representative or a senator in the Congress, then I would vote for that person regardless of their party affiliation, because we need more of that thinking right now in the Congress, especially, regardless of what affiliation they have politically. But anyways, a big thanks to you so much for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, we wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to support American and Western interest on air every single night, and also advocate for the best for what this republic needs. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it actually appears that we have fresh footage coming out from Kolpino in St. Petersburg. So Matthew, what do we got there?
So it looks like we have a brand new piece of footage showing some up close angles of the fire at that warehouse, apparently in St. Petersburg or outside of it, and it looks like pretty much the whole thing is burnt down for the most part. So they're saying it's an accident, but I'll be honest, that does not look like an accident to me. I don't even know how you'd go about doing something like that as an accident. But Enforcer, let's take a look.
Dang.
That's serious right there. Man, they got the command center set up and everything. It's like, what are y'all even doing? It's just burnt to the ground already.
Yes, Comrade, we have an eye on it. All right, what do you want to do from the command center? Watch it. Like it's like, okay, good.
Safety first, always. Oh wow, the whole thing, the loading docks and everything's burning.
They're making such a cool cinematic of this for the building to quite literally have already... Look, they're literally firing the hoses into a burnt-out and destroyed building already. It's like, what good is this at this point?
Yeah, I don't get it either. Also, that we can just show that and leave it there at that.
Hello?
You don't make it awkward. Just move on.
Well, you just stopped. You're like, we should stop it at that point. And I was like, what, did you just cut off? But moving us on from that, I mean, hell, man, how am I supposed to not make it awkward? It sounded like your mic just dropped out and you fell out of Discord. I was like, are you there? But anyways, moving us on from that fire at Colpino and moving us on from into the rest of the news that we have for the night, it's now time for us, folks, to move on down and into the Middle East, as we have been able to see some interesting developments here over the course of the day. U.S. aerial tankers have been active over the area over the course of this day, largely conducting some sort of an air operation. That's the best we could tell y'all. An A3 Sentry was up, along with two KC-46 tankers and a the 135 tanker, most of them appearing to operate out of the Al Adid air base inside of Qatar. We also were able to see that in Abu Dhabi, the UAE has set up a large protective structure over cages, or more so oil storage tanks around the city of Abu Dhabi. I won't be able to show you all the clip, but I can show you this brief image here, which is showing the large structures that have been built over the oil tanks. We've also been able to hear, additionally, that inside of the Strait of Hormuz, the Islamic Republic of Iran has stated, according to the Supreme National Security Council, that not a single drop of oil will pass through the Strait of Hormuz if the countries surrounding us participate in the economic war or the upcoming sanctions regimen. We've also been able to hear that the Iranians then announced that any opening of the Strait of Hormuz will be managed by Tehran and will carry a fee. He said that this has no link to the Iran-Oman deal in the Strait's middle route. So we do understand that the Iranians are still continuing to control unilateral, I guess you could say, authority over the Strait of Hormuz, to put it that way. We've also been able to see outside of this that the Iranian government within Tehran today has been quite active in statements as well. Apparently, the former economic minister, Ehsan Kanduzi, oh, what a doozy, said all signs indicate that next month there will be both an uprising and a war. He says, civil uprising and a war. He says that planned increases in fuel and energy prices will further inflame unrest in Iran. We don't know how accurate that is. I would generally hope that that is true, that they go through a civil uprising. But the more important part is that he believes or anticipates that a war is once again coming to the region between the U.S. and the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's just a matter of when. And he's expecting that it's going to be within the next month. And honestly, I would say that that's not really that far off from it. I would believe, folks, that within this next month, either the Iranians are going to restart the conflict and force the United States in it prematurely so that they can try and secure another victory over the United States in another third phase of the conflict, or the United States is going to go back to war with the Islamic Republic of Iran to try and force the Strait of Hormuz open before the fuel shortage starts to grip the United States tremendously. We've also been able to hear that in the Iranian government statements today, Iran said that any country that participates in U.S. sanctions will be considered an enemy state, and we also were able to hear in Overstemi Central, which is the Iranian state television channel, that the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, aka the Haggard Muppet, as you can see right here, added, "We will not surrender in any way. We will fiercely defend Iran to the last drop of blood and will not allow the enemy to set foot on Iranian soil. Our armed forces give give themselves to the nation of Iran to the last drop of blood. We also were able to hear allegations that this man right here, the Iran Supreme National Security Council secretary, also threatened that he would kill U.S. soldiers by looking at them and turning them to stone, similar to Medusa, because of his hideous and misshapen face.
What's Oscar the Grouch talking about? He's getting very violent over his trash can again. He's like, he's very vigilant to make sure that the trash can is not going to be stolen or taken by anybody. It's just the problem is he's taking the lid off the trash can. And he's trying to beat the West over the head with the trash can lid. It's like Oscar can't expect to sit over there and be completely undisturbed in a situation like that.
Honestly, he can. And also, listen to him.
البته ما جنگ طلب نیستیم ولی به هیچ وجه تسلیم نخواهیم.
I mean, that's pretty rough.
That sounds better than it looks. I ain't saying much.
Like he sounds quite literally, man, like someone who's on death's doorstep already. It's like, damn, bro. It's like you could really go for a role in Star Wars as like a dying like Jabba lord of some planet or something like that. It sounds pretty rough, but. Anyways, moving us on out of the Iranian governmental statements today, we also were able to hear that the Russians are returning their personnel back to the Bushehr nuclear power plant to start the continued construction of the second reactor at the power plant, which the Russians were working on before the conflict started. We've also been able to hear that inside of southern Lebanon, the Israelis have continued bombardments of the southern Lebanese regions against suspected or alleged Hezbollah strongholds and military locations in this part of the country. We were able to see one of those strikes right there in this brief clip, and we also were able to see a longer version of the airstrikes in this wide shot here.
And this is Lebanon?
This is southern Lebanon, now near the Al Tahrir Heights.
Interesting. I'm sure this will have an acceleratory effect for the war restarting too, I'd imagine.
Oh, the Israelis are just fiending for it. Man, like they're fiending for it so badly, they can't even wait for it to be the Iranians. They're just trying to pick anybody at this point. But we'll get to that here in a moment, folks. Y'all hear that? Sounds like a drone, a Hermes. Oh!
Oh! Most calm night in Lebanon seen in centuries.
Man. Man, so someone from Lebanon is about to say it was a beautiful country, the Switzerland of the Middle East. It's like, yeah, it hasn't been that in like 50 years. It's like, that was like a long time ago. That would be like someone from Detroit going, it's the jewel of America, the motor capital. It's like, yeah, maybe like 50 years ago. It's like not today. But moving us on out of southern Lebanon, as we were saying, folks, the Israelis, they're fiending for a fight. They've been bombing Hezbollah every single night, hoping that the Iranians will do something about it, and they really haven't done anything about it yet. But before I get you all into what the Israelis have done today, it looks like a lot of people are talking about the fact that the UAE has finished that major construction of the drone cages around their fuel tanks, and whether or not the war in Iran is going to start soon, because those sorts of significant expenditures, folks, usually are not undertaken for absolutely no reason. It's usually undertaken when they believe that those sorts of facilities would be attacked in the future, which suggests that they expect that they're going to be back to war in the future, or the Iranians are going to be attacking them in the future. So Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so the UAE has finished installing drone cages around those fuel tanks that we just saw a short while ago. Sadly, we were not able to show the video for copyright reasons, but we could see the image of these massive, like, metal drone cages around all these different oil and fuel tanks. So do you think that the Iran war will restart soon now that these precautions have been put into place, or is it simply a precaution? And 77% said yes, the war is coming around once again very quickly, while 12% said no, these are mere precautions, and that does not mean the war is restarting, and 8% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And I would say I'm with the 77%. I think the war is coming back around again. My hunch the last time they paused the war, which we're currently still in that pause right now, is because they ran out of air interceptors once again in the Middle East due to lack of planning, and also these oil tanks and oil drums that Iran's naturally going to target next. They were in the wide open and pretty much indefensible to a large degree. So I think the war is coming back around again. We've even heard rumblings out of the U.S. leadership that the strikes are still on the table, apparently, despite this new economic plan that they're putting forward apparently is working or not. They're saying that strikes could be back on the table. So I would suspect that in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably see a return to hostilities. Iran will probably be the one to kick it off, and the U.S. will be there to respond to it. That's my guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I would agree. I think that the war is going to be coming back around. It's hard to say who's going to restart it. The U.S. may have to restart it because the oil situation might start to spiral out of control, and that might pressure them into restarting the conflict. Or the Iranians might decide to try and restart the conflict before the midterm elections, so that way they can try and conduct another resounding defeat on the United States, which, once again, folks, if we actually dedicated ourselves to the war, we could easily win any phase of the conflict that we've been in so far. But with the U.S. government, how it's operating right now, which is paramount to like award-winning stupidity, they'll once again fumble it most likely, and that's what the Iranians are probably betting on. They probably would end up being able to get another resounding defeat on the U.S., at least here as the U.S. public would view it, and then that would be able to sway the midterms in a way where the Iranians would be able to try and see that the president's party loses the midterms. It looks to be largely their plan from what we're hearing that they're going with right now. Not to make it a political thing, but that's what the Iranians are actually trying to vie for, is to kind of screw the United States over before the midterms to be able to sway the midterms a certain way. But moving us on out of that little bit of news that we've been able to hear in that poll about the situation with the Iranians, the Israelis, folks, they're fiending for a fight. And I got to tell you, folks, apparently the Iranians are not the only ones that can get the Israeli hands. The Israeli hands are rated E for everybody. And so the Israelis have now moved on today to once again threatening the Turks, as the Israelis say they will not accept the deployment of Turkish forces in northern Syria. And tensions are still escalating between Turkey and Israel in recent days. I've got to say, folks, I got to be honest with you, folks. The Israelis went from a country that I very much supported in 2023, in late 2023, to a country that I'm getting quite weary and tired of at this point right now. Israel picking a fight with the Turks, regardless of Turkey doing Turkey things, is not really a good move. Turkey is a NATO member, and the United States also has to maintain Turkey as a NATO member, so we have control over the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles to stop Russian shipments going into Russia in the midst of an open world war. The Israelis picking a fight with the Turks is putting us in an impossible position to where the United States either has to pick the Turks or we have to pick the Israelis. And the strategic reality of it is, folks, is that it would probably be the Turks that are going to be generally picked over the Israelis, because the Turks have a vital waterway that they're in control of. The Israelis are generally on a strip of the Arabian Peninsula on its western coast. It gets very annoying to have to keep jockeying, like, as far as like how it goes with the Israelis, because the Israelis are generally an adversary of everybody in the region that's a larger country. They aren't really that friendly with Jordan. They aren't really that friendly to a degree with Saudi Arabia. They are friendly with the UAE, however. They aren't friendly with Turkey. It's like, y'all got to stop this stuff. Like, I don't know what's going on in Israel, but it's like, y'all got to stop this stuff. It's fine if you have the Iranians as an enemy, because clearly the Iranians are an enemy, a common enemy of Israel and the United States, but the Turks are an ally of the United States, regardless of how irregular an ally they are. And Israel is also an ally of the United States, regardless of how irregular they are as well. And they're putting us in a position where we might have to choose one of them in the future, which is a pretty bad spot to be in. I mean, my personal assessment. But moving us on.
I don't think so. I don't think so personally. I think if Turkey and Israel have a problem, it's not the U.S.'s prerogative to get in the middle of all that. Like, if Turkey gets into it with Israel and they have a dispute in the Middle East, I mean, that's not something the U.S. needs to go jumping into and trying to solve it for the two of them. I mean, that's their problem to sort out if it comes down to that.
But the thing is, though, is that the Israelis don't really have any right to say that the Turks are creating an escalatory situation by putting their armed forces in northern Syria. Because as far as we're concerned, the Turks are putting their armed forces in northern Syria for policing and security against insurgent forces in northern Syria. It's like, what in the world do the Israelis have that is a problem with that? It's not like the Turks are saying we're going into Syria to be able to crush the Israelis. I haven't seen the Turks make a public statement like that at all. So this action isn't even addressing the Israelis. It's more so addressing policing and security inside of northern Syria. And that's
But why are they in northern Syria though? I mean, really, I mean, I'm not in favor of Israel going into other countries creating security zones. I'm not really in favor of that. I never have been. I'm also not in favor of Turkey doing that either. But, the borders exist for a reason. Just because a country is unstable like Syria doesn't mean it's time to go and start sending your forces in. So, like, under the guise of a security border. Like, I don't really agree with that.
Well, would you agree with the U.S. putting U.S. forces in Ukraine if there was never a war that broke out because the Ukrainians were scared of the Russian Federation possibly invading them at some point in the future?
Well, did the Syrians ask for Turkey to come into their country?
Yes, they have requested it, and that's why the Turks are going there.
And how many are they sending?
I think they're opening up a couple of air bases and a couple of small army bases to conduct policing and security operations in northern Syria.
Are you positive the Syrians asked the Turks to come into there?
I'm pretty sure because, I mean, Assad's
Because I could have
regime,
sworn I could have sworn when the regime fell, Turkey just like started sending their forces in without anybody giving any permission. I could have sworn that was the way it went.
that was during the civil war. The current government, the Syrian interim government, is backed and supported by the Republic of Turkey. So it would be pretty hard to say that the current government, backed and supported in arms and finance by the Republic of Turkey, wouldn't support the deployment of Turkish forces on northern Syrian soil.
So it says here, Syria did not formally invite a new Turkish military intervention or deployment into its bases, but the new Syrian government has established close political and formal military cooperation with Turkey. But there's no formal there's no formal agreements to allow Turkey to come into the area and start setting stuff up. So it seems that like I said before, when the collapse happened, Turkey just rushed in and started like taking the initiative by going into the area. We saw that when the collapse happened, and they've never really left. So I don't know. Like I can see both sides of it personally. I can see why Israel's concerned about that because that's certainly not good when you see like a country like Turkey start going into another sovereign country like Syria under the guise of security. It's like they can protect themselves from their own borders. They don't need to start going into other countries, and Israel doesn't need to either. That's they should adhere to the borders.
But at the same time, though, if the current Syrian government has strong military and military cooperation relations with the Turks, and the Turks are looking at opening bases in northern Syria, which is the point of discussion or the point of contention here, and the Syrian government says we're okay with that, we want y'all to open bases in northern Syria, where in the world did the Israelis get the right to tell the Syrians and the Turks that they can't do that? Considering that the Turks have not publicly stated at any point, as we see right now, that they have any plans of conducting a military conflict against the state of Israel.
Well, I mean, there's bad blood between Turkey and Israel. That's why. I mean, Erdogan's government's made statements toward Israel which have not been friendly, and Israel's been making those similar statements right back at them. So they're definitely not friendly whatsoever. I just don't understand, like, what's the need for Turkey to go into Syria? That's my point that I'm making right here. They rushed in when the collapse happened, uninvited, and now they're staying there, and now they're trying to solidify it. So it's like, what is the purpose of that? Why do they need to be in Syria all of a sudden? Because they weren't there before, but now they are.
Well, why do we need to be in Iraq or Kuwait or Saudi Arabia or Syria ourselves up until a couple of months ago? Why do we need to be there?
Well, because the whole place was completely out of control. But now there's a government in Syria that's trying to solidify itself. So it's not completely out of control at this point. It's not like a free for all.
Well, ISIS is conducting attacks around Aleppo and throughout the whole of the former SDF territories of Syria. So I would say that that's about the same situation we're seeing in Iraq, where U.S. forces are currently based still for policing operations. So why would it be a wrong thing for Turkey to do the same thing the U.S. does? Because if we're taking the idea that Turkey's doing that just to jockey against Israel and get ready to beat their ass, couldn't we say that the U.S. isn't there to police any sort of insecurities in Iraq, and they're there to get ready for a war with Iran instead, and therefore the U.S. Military involvement in Iraq is completely unjustified and unsupported from that same position?
I'm not totally sure about all that, to be honest, but all I know is there's a government in Syria. They have the ability to like defend their own territory. They don't need foreign countries rushing in like Turkey to go in there and start doing whatever Turkey's trying to do. And in my view, I see Turkey as a growing force in the region. Turkey wants to power extend into the Middle East even further, like pretty much everybody does. That's a Middle Eastern country. They want to start expanding. So I can understand why Israel doesn't want that, and I also question why Turkey's doing it as well. Because if they want to protect their territory in Syria, then they can do that. That's their country. If ISIS starts getting out of control and Syria's not dealing with it properly, well, that's a whole other discussion at that point. But we're not quite there.
I would say that I'm not really against the Turks. I would have to say, folks, by the way, the Turks aren't really that great of an ally, but they're still an ally of the United States because they're in the NATO treaty organization, and that also allows us control of the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, which are vital waterways that we must control as a part of the Western sphere. The Israelis, on the other hand, are a large military ally because they are a common ally against the Islamic Republic of Iran. So at the moment right now, both of these allies are indispensable to the United States in this current moment that we're in right now. So what I'm generally saying is that it's getting tiresome to deal with the Israelis always trying to create a bone to pick, really, more so with the Turks, because we can't really get rid of either of them. And I would, if I was the president of the United States, I would be calling up the Israelis and telling them to completely drop their qualms with the Turks, because we can't piss off the Turks. And if it looks like the Turks are getting aggressive against the Israelis at some point, then we'll call up the Turks and tell them to back off as well, or the United States is going to come in and start laying down the hammer on one or the other, whichever one is doing the wrongdoing at that moment of time. But we can't have common allies in the region batting against each other or looking to keep on threatening and batting against each other, because this is creating a whole different front in the region outside of the one that the U.S. has, which is this third-party front. We have the U.S. front and the Gulf State front against Iran, and now in the background, in the backdrop of this all, we have the Turkish front and the Israeli front that's also going on as well between two common allies. It's just too much. It's too much instability between common allies in the area for us to handle, and that's what's making this quite exhausting to look at and have to deal with, because from a strategic sense, this could start to further divide the region, because a lot of the countries in this area are going to start picking sides between the Israelis and the Turks, and then we're going to see that they're going to start to divide themselves amongst the countries that support the Israelis and the ones that support the Turks, and then our common security assurance sphere is going to be further divvied up and divided because of the ongoing Turkish-Israeli feud, which is not beneficial for us. But beyond that, though, it looks like we actually have a poll on the situation inside of the United Kingdom, which is actually a part of the Middle Eastern news today. According to reports that came out from the Telegraph, Iran actually was able to shut down a British power plant for 4 days in an unprecedented cyber attack. It is thought to be the first time that hackers affiliated to the Iranian regime have succeeded in closing down such a facility in the UK, and believed to be the most successful cyber attack of its kind so far in Iranian history. And so we are seeing at the moment right now that the Iranian cyber attacks are becoming a lot more dangerous and a lot more destructive in what they're able to do, including the shutdown of a whole power plant in the UK. And a lot of people are talking about that very incident and their thoughts on it. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so a very disturbing move, I would say. Very disturbing here that Iran apparently shut down, or at least allegedly shut down, a UK power plant for 4 days. That's 4 entire days the power plant was allegedly shut down due to a severe cyber attack. So, what are your thoughts? 48% said Iran is capable of much worse, while 26% said it's concerning, but we need more info, and 17% said Iran simply got lucky with that one. And we don't have all the details about this. I think the Telegraph, was the one to report this, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct about that?
Yes, they were the one.
Okay, so I think they were the ones to report it. Sadly, I don't know the method of how they cyber attacked it to take it down. I'm not sure if it was simply a bad password that caused them to easily get into a system or something like that, like we've seen here in the United States with these water facilities. I'm not really sure what mode of a cyber attack it really was, but the fact they were able to take down a whole power plant, that is highly concerning. And pretty much, here's the way I look at it. When Iran cyber attacks somebody, it's not just Iran doing it. Iran has the backing of China and their whole hacking division. China is the most capable cyber attack country on the planet. So whatever China's capable of doing, Iran's also capable of doing that pretty much as well, because they get trained by the Chinese, they get assistance, and sometimes I would not be surprised if China was directly involved in it to a certain degree. So I would say that Iran is capable of much worse because they have the support of China behind them with all those different resources that China has. And, it's concerning to see it because it's like, how do you combat something like that if they have all those resources? I'm not really sure if it's possible unless every single country or every single company in these countries decides to start really getting serious about their cybersecurity. So I don't know. Like to me, I think they are capable of much worse, and we should be very vigilant about that. So I'm with the 49%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree they are capable of much worse, and I would say that we definitely need to make sure that our cybersecurity here in the Western Sphere is accounted for and taken care of as much as we possibly can, because that could prove a successful backdoor for the Islamic Republic of Iran to be able to exploit and cause significant economic or material damage here in the West as a result of their meddling and interference inside of the cyberspace that our critical institutions and facilities operate off of. So I'll be with the 48% as well. But moving us on out of the Middle East and on into East Asia for a brief moment, we did see that unfortunately today in Taiwan, they suffered a bit of a technological setback. Taiwan's first domestically built satellite launch vehicle was actually destroyed mid-flight on its debut test, drifting towards inland mountains rather than out to sea, which was the intended goal on the eastern coast of the country, and I believe that the rocket actually had to be remotely detonated and destroyed after its failed launch. I'll only show you all a few seconds of this clip. where you see the failure of the missile right there.
Oh, dang, man, that's really going out of control bad.
Yeah, it was a bad errant sort of a launch. Don't know what went wrong with it, but this is going to set the Taiwanese back a little bit because they had a plan to be able to use these sorts of small satellite missile launchers to be able to send up a couple of military satellites into space to be able to improve their surveillance and also communications capabilities independently at the national level. And it appears that there's going to be a bit of a technological setback because this original debut launch, which was supposed to approve the actual missile for use for that sort of an operation, has now suffered a critical failure. So this might set back their launch date by weeks, if not months, as a result of this kind of a failure. But regardless, this is going to be causing a little bit of an issue for the Taiwanese to put military satellites up in the number they need in the time that they probably have before a war with China may begin in the 2028 to 2032 time window. Moving us on out of that news, we also were able to hear in some natural disaster news that a heavy earthquake actually hit Tokyo just a little bit this morning. Apparently, it's a 5.5 to a 5.6 magnitude earthquake. Not extremely strong. It's not like a 7 or an 8 or anything like that, like we saw up Kamchatka in Russia a little while ago, a couple of months back. But it was one that shook the Tokyo area, and the Tokyo area is not unfamiliar to any kind of seismic activity because they have seismic activity somewhat regularly in Japan. But before we move on out of that news and towards the United States of America, it actually appears that we have breaking news coming out at this point right now. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so it looks like Ukraine is carrying out the prediction once again that I made the other day. It looks like very likely, most likely allegedly, another ozone warehouse was just attacked, apparently in Orenburg, Russia right now. This marks the second ozone warehouse that has probably been hit in just the last couple of days. So it looks like wild berries is largely getting a break, and now ozone's going to take a bit of a pounding for a little while, no pun intended. But you see here that we see a massive hit. I can't see the logo on the side of the building to confirm it's an ozone warehouse, but they're saying it is. So let's take a look at the videos.
That guy's definitely panicking.
Oh,
Like, you put me. Oh, but beyond that, it looks like it was directly hit. Let me see if I can find an ozone in Orenburg. Orenburg, the city of Orenburg. Oh boy, is that the wild berries? No, we need to find one with a truck lot. Is that the wild berries? Maybe. Preview. Wow, there was nothing out here in 2021, so maybe this is the wild berries building. Possibly. Can I see a wall on this thing? Can we get a wall? No.
so you
No
just punch in
wall.
ozone, pops it up instantly.
Oh, I kept saying wild berries. Ozone in Orenburg. Ah, yes. This large factory must be the ozone. Like, actually, this is a mall.
Oh.
So it looks like
Let's
this
see
didn't
here.
help.
So it's in a large open field with a lot of grass around it. So it appears to be on the perimeter of the city somewhere. So it's got to be on the edges of it.
South, north, east, west.
Can't tell you that.
Dang. Oh, you're just looking at the videos. I would assume that's probably one of these buildings out here that's just being constructed. That's what I'm thinking, but we'll have to wait and see, folks. That might be an incorrect assessment. But the last time we did this, folks, we actually got it dead on the nail, apparently, and then we second-guessed ourselves. So I'm going to put down the rough approximate. It's around these buildings right here on the outskirts of the city. So moving us on out of the Orenburg attack and the major strike that was just conducted there, we have also been able to see, moving us on and into the United States of America, that the United States of America is currently announcing that oil and gas production is at an all-time high, according to the U.S. Energy Secretary. That's incredibly interesting news. We understand that it's at an all-time high because they're trying to supplant the Middle Eastern oil production, so they're trying to eke every last drop out of U.S. production to be able to account for the gap that's currently being seen in global supplies. That's generally why we understand that that's the case, and that's once again indicating that the oil situation in the Strait of Hormuz is not close to being fixed, unlike some claims from the U.S. government where they try and make it sound like everything's almost done and over with. So now, moving us on out of the United States of America and back on into Europe, we have been able to hear that within Belgium today, crazily enough, on Fox Business. I can't play the clip, folks. It's a copyright thing. But the U.S. ambassador to NATO said, "We are actively defending NATO airspace against reckless Russian incursions. Dang, that's wild. I haven't heard of the U.S. being
Man.
actively involved in it, though.
Yeah, also, it'd be good to hear that from the president, really. It's like, it's good to hear it from Matt. I think that's his name here. Not me, but that's Matt right there. Hopefully, I don't look like that later on down the line with no hair. No offense if you're bald, by the way. But hopefully, I keep my hair. I like my hair. But, it would be nice to hear that from the president, really. It's like, these are some very serious occurrences with, Romania getting incurred, also Poland, too, and the Baltics. I mean, these are some very serious events to only have a U.S. ambassador talking about it.
It really is. And it's like, this is a great statement. I have to say, folks, like, big shout out to the U.S. ambassador to NATO. It's a great sounding statement, and I like it. I like the premise of it. But this isn't really echoed in any other part of the U.S. government at this point, whether it be the Department of Defense, the White House, or any other federal agency that's involved with dealing with the state of Ukraine. It is not reflected at all in any of those other government agencies. But the ambassador is making a good statement. I gotta say, it is a good statement. I'll give Matthew Whitaker credit for that great statement to hear. It's just that sadly the government isn't following through on anything in regards to the statement whatsoever in any other part. But moving us on out of Brussels and the NATO headquarters in Brussels, we've also been able to hear that the Federal Republic of Germany is now planning to spend a massive $12 billion on a long-term cruise missile program in order to deter Russia, and the plan includes producing massive amounts of Ukrainian Flamingo missiles initially, then moving on to more complex missile systems in the early 2030s, according to Politico. So it looks like they are now working on producing a larger number of ballistic missiles or cruise missiles within the Federal Republic of Germany and trying to provide some of those to Ukraine. Additionally, we've also seen that within Riga, Latvia, there has been an airspace closure today for unknown reasons. Apparently, according to Christie, the wind gusts over Riga hit over 100 kilometers an hour, which I feel like is a pretty big indicator of why the airspace might have been closed down there, is because I've never heard of a pilot trying to land a plane in a crosswind of 100 kilometers an hour. That's like a gale force wind, I believe, so
Oh.
that's probably the reason why.
Well, if you were a Giga Chad, you might be able to pull it off, maybe. I've landed aircraft in hurricane winds before on a flight simulator. I have many hours in my belt.
Man, honestly, man, you probably could do it. I mean, you are built different, but a 68-mile-per-hour crosswind? I mean, would you be able to do that? What orientation is the runway in, anyways, at Riga? Let me see here. Where is? So it quite literally wasn't crosswind 90 degrees across the runway. It wasn't going up or down the runway. It quite literally was across the runway. So if you tried to come in that, my God, man, you know what you probably could have done? You could have flown the plane in from the west heading east, just kind of plopped it down on the runway, just kind of slowly lowered it down on the runway because it would be basically flying into the wind at the same speed as its stall speed, and then just touch down on the runway and taxi over to the airport. Really, I mean,
Yeah, that's basically what you do, by the way. Also, by the way, I'm joking, folks, about the whole flight simulator thing. Obviously, that's not real life experience. I'd probably crash the damn thing if I was trying to actually land it in hurricane winds in real life. But that's basically what happens, at least on the sim. If you try to go into winds that strong, especially if you're going against the wind and you're trying to land in it, the aircraft just basically hovers and you just basically slightly set it down. Basically, I believe the simulator is real life physics. It just simply puts it on the screen, I'm pretty sure. So if it's obviously you can't do that. Like if you have people on board, you can't risk all their lives trying to pull something like that off.
yeah, you really you can't. But obviously, honestly, Matthew, if I was there, I would have just intervened. I just would have really breathed in super deep, and I would have just faced east, in the direction of the oncoming wind, and I would have just blown with my mouth from my lungs really really hard towards the wind against it, and that would have evened it out, and the winds would have returned back to normal, and they could have landed them immediately. I mean, honestly, that's what I would have done. I mean, I would have just intervened, but apparently the Latvians just don't think like that, which is really sad. I wish that a lot of people would think that way, because it would really help us to be able to keep the airspace moving, and keep planes landed and flying and taking off and whatnot, keep planes on time. Sadly, it just doesn't look like they have that kind of thinking in Latvia. Someone's about to be like, you idiot! I'm just kidding, by the way. I'm just kidding. But moving us on from that and up into Estonia, we also were able to hear 10 hours ago that the Estonian Internal Security Director has urged the defense firms to ramp up physical and digital security following a suspected Russian-linked arson attack at Milram Robotics, warning that Moscow poses a long-term existential threat. So the Estonians are still trying to make sure to account for the Russians doing their stupid crap in Estonia, and also trying to produce a larger amount of arms as well, because of the stupid crap the Russians are doing and what the stupid crap they might be doing in the future could entail. Moving us on out of all of that news, though, in Western Europe, it's now time for us folks to finally start returning back to the news inside of Russia. We still have a couple of things left to cover that we did not get to yet. We were able to see that Russian propaganda came out from the Ministry of Defense once again, showing an Iskander, and it says, "Erupted will always be. You open the box yourself, Pandora." Russian Ministry of Defense.
Wait a minute. Am I not mistaken? Like, I'm not very up to speed on this whole Pandora box and all this business right here, but isn't it opening Pandora's box to letting the demons out or something like that?
Basically, yeah.
So the Russians are the demons.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, at least they admit it, basically. I mean, if they're saying that Ukraine opened Pandora's box and Pandora's box is the Russian military and they're calling themselves demons, I guess that's a fair assessment.
Man, they're going to give the enemies nightmares. Oh boy, man, I can't wait for them to put out those. Also, it's like an Iskander taking off into a lightning storm. It's like, I don't really think that's like tactically sound, really.
Yeah, I don't think that is tactically sound.
Man, but the Russians, they do it in real life regardless. Like, really, they would. We also were able to hear that apparently the Russian Federation is also suffering from a grain industry collapse, as Russia has reduced grain exports by 60% from August 1st to 20th to 1.4 million tons. And this article largely goes on to describe that the export volumes have fallen by 60%, which is absolutely devastating for the Russians. It is destroying the grain industry and also the farmers of the country, because they're not able to produce this major kind of profits that they had been able to by the exportation of their grains into foreign markets. And so we are seeing that the Russian grain industry is finally taking significant damage from the Ukrainian drone attacks that have been conducted over the course of this year. We also were able to see that they have come up with ozone bingo, which we showed earlier on the stream, and we do know that the Chapayevsk facility in Samara is burning to the ground, one of the largest ones that the ozone facility has, and now we're hearing that apparently the one in Orenburg, which is funnily enough the biggest one in the whole country, is now also burning down as well. Hopefully we'll get an update on this little chart tomorrow for the the ozone bingo. I'm so used to seeing wildberries at this point. Hopefully we'll have an update on the ozone bingo tomorrow, where the number one largest distribution facility in the whole of the country was knocked out. Moving us on out of that little bit of news, though, of the ozone bingo card, which we'll now be tracking daily, we've also seen that the Russian Federation is continuing to deal with worse and worse issues with gas. We now see that the Russians are now using janitor buckets to fill it with gas to try and get off with a couple of extra liters. Take a look. We'll have to mute that. They got music out there at that station.
Man, I guess you could say he showed up to the gas station. He's cleaning up, I guess you could say. Call him the janitor. He out here cleaning.
Man, he's mopping it up.
Man, call him the janitor. He's out here sliding around with the mop.
Well,
look at him eyeing this dude right here, mean mugging him. Look at him showing those teeth too.
Man, like a feral,
this dude's acting weird as hell.
Dude, like a feral marmot, man. He looked up and looked at the guy for a minute, and then went like he kept like pumping the gas. It's like, damn, bro, I didn't know the Russians were like that. But all right, we also get to see this other guy carrying around a gas jug and what looks to be some sort of a small bat of some sort. I don't really know what that is.
Oh, he's gonna put it right back. Oh, he's gonna put it in the back of the Mercedes. No way. Look at him.
Man,
oh, man.
When that thing flips over in there, it's gonna smell nice and good of gasoline vapors. Oh boy.
That's not the new Mercedes, Centerblad.
Don't worry, you might throw up after smelling it for a couple of minutes in the car, but you'll get used to it eventually, or pass out. We also got to see the tensions running high at the gas station.
The first thing you hear is somebody yelling bloody murder.
Bro, like before I can even pause it. Well, here's the clip.
Oh dang, man! They got his girl involved in it. This is a bad scene right here. This is a bad scene. Look at that. They're getting heated over his gasoline.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, dude. This guy looks like he's been living through the war for all 1,641 days. An update. He's tired. Like, man, he looks like he's done with it, man. Like, this is like the 10th time he's dealt with this in the last week.
Man, honestly, that dude over there yelling, the one on the right, sounds like that dude on the like what was that thing? You remember back when COVID was going around and
Get
it was
out
like
of my
the hood,
car!
it was like the hood council, and they were like, "Stop touching people with your damn hands!" He's like yelling like that and stuff like that. You remember that one?
Oh, I remember that one. I thought you were about to say like the guy from that meme where he's like, "Get out of my car now!" Like I thought you kind of sounded like that, like in Russian.
I don't know what he's saying.
I wonder, man. He was over there tweaking though. I mean, look at him,
Качели на заправке.
bro. He's having a literal crash out at the gas station.
Honestly, like he's probably been waiting there for a day. Like he's just running on fumes. No pun intended.
Dude, I mean, look at him, dude. This guy is so over the top. It's unbelievable. Man, but beyond that though, that's one of the few clips that we can show y'all, and y'all wouldn't believe this, folks. That's the low end of the aggression that I saw in some of the footage today. There were fistfights at almost every gas station in Russia today, I would bet, because there were like 10 different videos I saw of fistfights and people whipping out guns and stuff again in the gas stations. That was the tamest one, and it was the one I could show y'all. Crazy stuff going on in Russia over the gas pumps, really. I mean, it's unbelievable at this point. We also got to see that in the Voronezh area, a report came out that air defenses were firing over the city. But that was really all we got, was a written report out of that, so we won't hang out on that too long. So moving us on out of that, it's now time for us to move on down and into Romania and Moldova and Bulgaria, which is the last things that we have to cover before we get to the actual war in Ukraine. In Bulgaria, we have been able to hear that the 2 U.S. Air Force KC-135 tankers that were at Bulgaria's Besmer Air Base have now left, ending their temporary deployment roughly after a month of arrival. Bulgarian Defense Minister Dimitar Stoyanov says the aircraft flew training missions over allied countries during their stay, and that Sofia had no information indicating a direct threat to Bulgarian security. The deployment had drawn local protests and warnings from Iran, which accused Bulgaria of facilitating U.S. operations against the Iranians. Sofia rejected that accusation. Apparently, Sofia is a very scared lady who does not want to get into any sort of confrontation. I don't know who in the world Sofia is or why she's involved in this story, but it's absolutely ludicrous to even mention that at the end. By the way, I'm just kidding. That's the capital of Bulgaria. Sofia is the name of the capital of the country. I just want to make that clear because someone's about to absolutely lose it in the chat. You idiot! So I gotta make it clear, folks. To ruin the whole joke, it's the capital of the country. It's just called Sofia. But moving us on from that and on into our next bit of news, we also were able to hear of another drone incident that occurred along the Romanian coastline near to the port of Castana. As we were able to hear that this morning, Romania's Ministry of Defense was called in after suspected drone fragments were reported near Tuzla Beach in Castana County. Romanian Navy EOD combat divers are heading to the area to inspect and secure the fragments. So another drone incident has occurred on Romanian beaches. We've also been able to hear that in Moldova today, the situation was far worse, as in Moldova, the Moldovan authorities stated that a Russian Garan 3 drone violated its airspace overnight following Russia's attack on Ukraine. Moldovan authorities say the drone crossed into Moldova from Ukraine's Odessa region at 4:07 in the morning, flying towards the village of Kaplani in the Stefan Voda district. The drone remained inside Moldovan airspace for around 17 minutes before leaving at 4:24 and crossing back into Ukraine. So an airspace incursion was reported within Moldovan airspace as a result overnight. Now, moving us on from that, it's finally time for us to get on into the Voyna na Ukraini, bleed. So moving us on into the news from the war in Ukraine, it's time for us to get on into our location unknowns. The location unknowns were quite fascinating today. First, we were able to see that Russia is starting to equip its Shahed drones with jet engines, reaching speeds up to 600 kilometers per hour. That's roughly about 350 to 375 miles an hour, which Ukrainian air defenses have struggled to shoot down when fired at cities, but are now adapting with their own jet engine drone interceptors. So we're now seeing that there is an arms race, or an arms evolution race, being conducted between the Russians and the Ukrainians, with the Russians trying to make their long-range drones faster to be able to avoid current Ukrainian air defenses, and now the Ukrainians are bringing forward jet-powered drone interceptors of their own to be able to combat the now faster Russian drones. We've also been able to hear as well, a cool picture of a Ukrainian Mirage 2000 was made today while sitting at an unknown tarmac at an unknown airbase inside of Ukraine. I like the Mirage 2000s. I always thought they looked pretty cool.
Yeah, I like him. It's just I wish I could see it. It's just a mirage. I don't know where it's at.
Man, You know, it's kind of like those Phantoms, you know, that they had in the U.S. Air Force a while ago, man. Whenever the Phantom would show up, I'd go, "Oh, get away, you damn demon!" Like, and then it disappeared, and everyone would be like, "What are you talking about?" I'd be like, "There was a Phantom here." Man, you know, people used to say that joke was a riot. With the money y'all paying here, y'all ought to be treating it like a riot. I'm just kidding, by the way. Y'all are watching for free. But moving us on from that, we also got to see the Ukrainians have created a firefighting unmanned ground vehicle.
Oh, that's pretty cool, I will say. That's pretty neat. I like the fact that the Ukrainians are literally leading the entire world in drone technology. You know what's interesting about that? It's like it's wild that nobody else has really come up with that because if you really think about it, it's just a basic like ATV chassis or something like that, basically like a skid steer type with just a remote control on it. It's nothing too crazy, but it's like Ukraine's the first to do it.
Man, it's kind of wild to think that Ukraine is the first to do it. It's like anyone could have done this at any given point. And we're seeing that the applications for this thing in military terms is endless. It's like, why in the world has no one done this yet? Like, why in the world has the U.S. not done this yet? I mean, these things only cost a few $1,000s each. It's not like they're extremely expensive. It's like anyone could have made this thing. And the Ukrainians are just, you know, taking this thing out to the works. I mean, they're doing literally anything and everything they can with them. And they're being put to good work these days. We also get to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours. And, oh, Briaka, 6 Bobcats.
Oh, they got 6 of them. That's a very nice. That's a very nice. But tell us more.
And according to Ms. Disa, keeper of the records, personnel and vehicles are below average, others just above. August to date looks similar to July totals, and 11 ground robotic complex is tied as the 9th highest loss, which is not on the graphic. And over the course of the past 24 hours, we were able to hear that 1,240 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 6 APCs, 435 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 64 artillery pieces, 1,792 drones, 2 MLRSs, 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 6 Bobcat skid steers. And a partridge in a pear tree. So moving us on from that little casualty report, it's now time for us to move on into the front lines. We have a lot of news that's come out of the front lines today, particularly from the most active battlefields of Konstantinivka and Dobropilia. Moving us on down and into the Chasiv Yar area, I'll just let y'all watch. Y'all be the judge.
Is that music or a speech or what is that?
That is Putin, Matthew. It is okay. You do not fret. Not copyright. It's just his annoying voice. No music. Like, man. I don't know why they added that in, but apparently a Russian supply driver T-boned another one and flipped him over.
Dang.
Not good.
This is glorious. It's what a triumphant victory for the Russians.
Man, what a big one. Man, it's that Nekrasnoshimaya legendaria. Man, they're not legendary and invincible. I mean, they're everything but legendary and invincible. We also got to see them hitting some Russian forces here in the 18th Slovyansk Brigade. Now, this one does have music. Observe. That's why we're muting it.
Oh, look at it. Searching around the Call of Duty map. Look at this.
Ramirez, defend the burger town.
Notice the technique, yeah. Look at the technique going around this little piece of junk. Look at
a Gyansen S. They got it on the breach.
Storing Gyansen in the yacht.
Man, these Bohankas are looking haggard these days, man. It's like they're being popped out of the factory as quick as they can make them.
It probably is, honestly.
Man, but the 18th Brigade put in the numbers today. We also got to see that elsewhere in the front, further on south, they were hitting Russian drones. The 36th Marine Brigade was. They took out a number of these. The boom. At the boom. It by the boom. It the boom, bliat.
What do they call these things? The Crapper 2000s?
I don't even know what the hell. Like, man, like these things are ugly.
We're going to launch a devastating attack of 500 shitters on the Ukrainians.
Whoa, styrofoam and PVC be upon ye, bleed. Man, it's like, damn, these things are made quite literally with the junk from the trash heap. But the Ukrainians took them down.
What's your supply chain for these, Ruskies? What's your supply chain? Well, we go dumpster diving every Friday for the parts.
We let the crocodile tweakers go out to the dumpster, and they find it and contribute to war effort. Yeah, well, do you mean that they voluntarily? No, we do it at gunpoint, but they still get it for us, though. Part of the war effort, patriotic and stuff. We also got to see the Ukrainians on the move through the town of Konstantinivka in this clip. Also, notice the little UGV that's also shadowing them on the other pathway to the left, right there.
He's just lurking over there.
Man, that's pretty cool, though, man. It's like, wow, that's honestly, man, when you think about it, it's like we are truly living in the future that people thought about like 15 and 20 years ago of what warfare would look like with like drone assistance on the ground moving with the infantry. We've entered that era, finally.
Finally, we're finally there. We almost have, Black Mirror and all that stuff. We're almost there.
Man, a police state for you and me. That's what we've been fighting for. But anyways, moving us on from that and towards Dobropilia, we also got to see another ground system of the Iron Group fighting on the front. These little ground systems put in all kinds of work, firing off MLRS rockets, machine guns, the whole 9 yards. The Ukrainians like to show them off. This one's got a machine gun. And it's going to fire at a target at a range of 900 meters. And it just smoked that target at 900 meters. That's almost a kilometer away. There goes another burst from the machine gun. When you think about it, folks, it's really interesting to see the Ukrainians can just roll around a UGV at this point, and not a single infantryman has to be out there with it.
Not a single infantryman.
It's Vadim the infantryman.
Right there.
Uh-huh.
That's a sketchy looking bridge right there. Looks like it's made out of balsa.
Balsa? I know that guy. He lives in Chelyabinsk.
The commander, he was a real balsa.
That was something that Russia would really say, wouldn't it? Like, he's a real balsa. Bleh.
He's a real bastard, that bastard.
I'm gonna frag him. Like, it's like, man,
Oh dear.
man, that's a real Russian statement right there. I'm gonna go AWOL and go ham in Sevastopol. I'm like, there you go, buddy. You do what you want. We also get to see another clip of the total destruction of Russian forces.
Wow.
I know what song that is. That's I Believe I Can Fly. That was the beginning note of it. We're not going to get copyrighted, folks. We only played a quarter second of it. Oh, there goes Vadim.
Those ankles will be regretting that.
Oh, an ATV. This guy put his hands in the air like he just didn't care. Oh, ooh. I don't think they're going to be putting their hands up. Oh, this guy did it like a gymnastics trick. Look at this. Look at this. He got up and he did a flip. And we can now see some of them lying around on the job. But moving us on from that and into the Pokrovsk area, we also were able to see the Ukrainians dropping some bombs and what the captioner described as IEDs into Russian-occupied positions. I'm assuming that those are TM-62 anti-tank mines. I wonder if we will be surprised, or what the hell was that? Dude, is that a... What is that?
That's a soda.
I wonder if it's going to be soda-licious. Oh!
Sody pop, that's what they call it. Emphasis on the pop part. Sody bang.
Now, I wonder if it's gone off yet. What the hell are these bombs made of? Like, they're huge. Like, they're like torso-sized bombs.
Man, the Ukrainians literally did that exact meme that those pranksters do. They walk up with the energy drink, the one called Bang, and they're like they're like hiding it in their back jacket pocket or something like that. And they walk up to like some random person. Hey man, you want to bang? What did you just say? I said you want to bang. We just go around the back and bang. And it's like, what are you talking about? And then they always get in an altercation. They pull out like the can of like the energy drink or whatever.
Yeah, dude, man. Honestly, man, those are funny, but they're also kind of messed up to a degree. But man, moving us on from that and on down the front, we also got to see in the Zaporizhzhia front, the Ukrainian army's Mi-8s were going on strike missions today. They were driving down the highway to get to them.
Well, that's impressive.
Pretty cool, honestly. I think it's pretty neat myself. We also were able to see, moving us on down and into the Kherson area, that the Ukrainians were also able to destroy some Russian boats and a comm system and another Russian position. The Russian vehicle base, bunker more so. It's just unfortunate the Russians don't make the door to these bunkers. That might help out a lot, but they never make those. That's unfortunate for the Russians. But moving us on from that clip in Kherson, we also get to see the Yak-52s dogfighting drones over Odessa today, which was pretty sick. Here's the clip. We see the Yak-52 coming on in behind the Shahed, like Snoopy and the Red Baron. Look at it. Getting right up on him.
I know the perfect song that would go with this right here.
And what would that be?
I don't know if I can say.
Well said.
No, I don't think so. Do you like your job?
Yeah, I like my job.
Then I can't say.
Hold up, I know it. I know the song. My collar's blue, but my neck is red.
Oh
Is that
no,
it?
no,
Oh.
that's not that one. No, that's that's for the factory. That's not for this.
Well, what would be for this then?
You must not like your job.
No, actually, I'm more curious than I like my job. What is this then?
Oh, nothing. I can't say.
Damn, man, like pulling teeth, man, like damn. But I mean, they're dogfighting them up there. I mean, they kept going in circles, on and on and on. But the video actually looped there, and I didn't even realize it because it was almost a perfect loop. But moving us on out of Odessa, that is all of the news that we had for the day throughout the entirety of the world. Sadly, Zelensky did not make a speech today. Apparently, he was busy with other affairs, and so he didn't have time to make one. But I do have to say, folks, that it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run this stream and cover this news with each and every single one of y'all once again. We both find great pride and great honor in knowing that we are able to present this news to each and every single one of y'all every single day, and I hope that once again, it's of a high quality and sound construction in the news coverage and the analysis here on the channel. Now, it's going to be time for us to move on to the second segment of the stream right now, and we'll be making sure to get to talk to each and every single one of y'all as much as we can, and we'll be able to talk about quite literally anything and everything except for religion, politics, climate change, whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not, and whether Iran could be nuked in certain circumstances, and a couple of other things. But nevertheless, it is time for us to move on and into those questions. Matthew, please, take it away. What do we have here?
All right, so moving into our final question segment of the night. It's time to get our super chats, our live chats, and our Morse code decoders, and we have a lot of good questions to get to. Also, by the way, for everybody wondering what the song was I was mentioning, it's an old German song. Someone in the chat actually just mentioned the name of it, but I won't say who it is, but so that way I can have some plausible deniability here. I didn't say that. I didn't say nothing. Seriously, I've never seen that song. I've never heard that song. It's a tune that I've never seen before. I don't like that tune. It's a tune-up, sir. That's what they call it. But anyways, it's an old German song, but I won't say the name of it because it's something we should probably leave in the past. But moving into our first super chat here, this one goes to none other than Carlos Santiago, who puts an $100 support. And thank you very much, Carlos, for that 100. We do appreciate it very much. And excuse me, by the way, Carlos said there's an emerging conflict between Israel and Turkey is NATO's second largest military, and an attack on Turkey can trigger Article 5 in the NATO treaty, but also with Article 5 of Mecca Accords, and the U.S. is in a quandary, and what do you think?
And I thank you massively for the tremendous support, Carlos Santiago, and I would have to say that is kind of the reason why I'm saying it's a pretty difficult conundrum that we have to deal with, because some people like Matthew say that it's really their problem and it's theirs to sort out, but leaving a vacuum like that, they're going to get to beating each other's ass eventually, and then it's going to become our problem because we're going to have to pick a side. We're either going to have to pick NATO or we're going to have to pick Israel. And I'm going to be completely frank with y'all here. If it became in between us picking NATO and Israel, I'm picking NATO every day of the week. The Israelis just do not provide as much value as NATO does, or the Europeans do as a trading partner. So the Israelis would sadly be without any support if it was up to my decision at that point, if it came to it. But I don't want it to come to that. And that's why I'm saying that we need to get into the middle of this and try and tell everyone to calm down and play nice, because the Turks are an important ally to us. Not that they're a great ally. And I also had to say, as my personal opinion is concerned, neither the Israelis nor the Turks are incredible or stellar allies at all. Like not a single bit. Because the Israelis do whatever the hell they want, whether it hurts the United States or not, and the Turks do the exact same. But because they're in important locations inside of the Middle East and also at the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, we can't really get rid of either of them. Like, we can't just lop them off and say, all right, there you go, you're off on your own. So we have to figure out a way to try and balance the two of them and stop them from escalating into a conflict where we have to pick one side or the other, which is the problem that I'm having. Because the Turks, and some people say, well, you know, so-and-so, Erdogan says this in Turkey. Is he ever going to follow through on that? No, because if he tried to, we would say, hey, look, Turkey, if you try and conduct an offensive war against Israel, we're going to get involved, the U.S. is, in kicking your ass. So don't do that. That's going to be stupid. And NATO, in Turkey, in that sort of a situation where they went into an offensive war against Israel, is not going to be provided any Article 5 protections whatsoever, because Article 5 protections are for a purely defensive situation, not for one where a country takes on an offensive action and then they get their ass beat afterwards and then they're on the defensive because they did poorly or because the U.S. jumped in to kick their ass. So the Turks can never go to war with Israel because the U.S. will be there to defend the Israelis. On the other hand, though, if the Israelis ever try to go into a conflict with the Turks, we have to side with the Turks to go to war with the Israelis, because we can't allow the Turks to be attacked preemptively by the Israelis, and then the Turks declare Article 5, and then everybody in Europe is willing to declare Article 5, and then we go, you know what, we're going to jump out of NATO and go join the Israeli side. Then at that point, we've screwed ourselves over massively. So we have to get involved in the middle right now and make it clear, if either of y'all go to war, whichever one of y'all made the first shot and the first offensive action against the other, we're going to join the other side and get involved in kicking your ass. And that alone ought to make them both go, you know what, maybe we've gotten a little bit over our heads, and maybe we're acting a little hot-headed here. Maybe we just need to calm down a little bit and negotiate, so that way we can try and make sure that we're not going to end up having the U.S. come down and kick either one of our asses. That's how I would look at it. Because, like, I gotta say, folks, the Middle Eastern situation is already screwed up as it is. We've let the Iranians get the upper hand on the Strait of Hormuz, and we do not want the Middle East to further fractionalize outside of a U.S. security assurance sphere to where some countries are going to pick the Turks, and they're going to go with the Turks on whatever they do, and then some countries are going to pick the Israelis. We certainly don't want that. It's already a weak position we're in right now, and if this continues to escalate, we could see that the U.S. position in the Middle East is lost with or without Iran being involved from this point any farther. It could be torn apart by our very own allies. So that's generally how I look at the situation, and that's what I would say the U.S. position should be in a simple form, but we should make sure to leverage in an official capacity, our defensive alliance that we have with the Israelis and our defensive alliance that we have with the Turks whenever one or the other is trying to aggress on the other country or make a threatening statement and say, y'all are both allies of the United States, y'all are both important to our interests, so we can't have y'all going around and aggressing on each other. Otherwise, we're going to have to step in and fight against whoever was the original aggressor, regardless of who it is. That's how I see it. But a huge thanks to you for the incredible support, Carlos Santiago. And Matthew, how do you see it? How do you see it?
I don't know, I see it, me personally, if I was in charge of foreign policy in the Middle East, I would take a very hands-off approach to it. I would simply say, I would affirm that Israel is our proxy in the region. I would say, keep Israel as an ally. That's how we power project in the region. We have bases in Israel. That's important for us. And also, we've begun using Israeli bases quite heavily to launch attacks in the region. So that's an indispensable resource for the United States. So it makes sense to keep that relationship open. But when it comes to, for example, like Turkey fighting with Israel and internal squabbles, I would take a very hands-off approach to it. I would say, look, if y'all are having a problem with each other, if y'all want to go fight, y'all go fight. That's what I would say personally, and let them solve it. If there's no mediator, nobody standing between them, I bet they'd be less inclined to fight.
I don't really think so. And also, if they did start to fight, we have defensive alliances with both sides. So if the Israelis attack Turkey, we are beholden to a defensive alliance with the Turks via the NATO charter. If the Turks attack the Israelis, we're bound to defend the Israelis via the defensive pact we have individually with Israel. So if we take a hands-off approach and we allow them to endlessly escalate until one of them fires the first shot, it then becomes our problem one way or the other. So we're either having to completely sever our allyship with the Turks or join them in a conflict against Israel, or we're having to completely sever our allyship with the Israelis or join them in
Oh,
a
no.
conflict against NATO.
Oh no, I would say that the treaties didn't really foresee two allies fighting like that. The treaty didn't really foresee that. The treaty was against, or it was intended for defending those allies against hostile powers, not against allies fighting allies. So I would simply say, hey, look, we may have a treaty, but we're not going to start getting in the middle of two allies. That goes against U.S. interest. Why would we end up alienating one ally to take the side of another? It's like if they want to fight, let's stay out of it. We don't want to get punched in the face for no reason and jump in the middle of it. It's like just tell them both, hey, look, that's y'all's problem. We're not jumping in the middle of it.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, is that it was say Israel attacks Turkey, and then Turkey goes, "Oh, I have been grievously wounded. I must declare Article 5." And then they declare Article 5, and then a whole bunch of countries like France, Italy, Britain, and Germany go, "You know what? Yeah, we'll go to war with you, Turkey. We'll actually go down there and help you to beat their ass." U.S., you got to hop in as well. We're all declaring Article 5. Then the U.S. has to go, "No, we're not declaring Article 5," and then that's going to create a NATO crisis. Like we're not going to join in on an Article 5 invocation. We're actually going to go defend the Israelis. Or we're just going to stay out of it. Well, Israel's about to get their ass beat by the whole of NATO, excluding the United States of America. So we're about to lose the Israelis anyways in that sort of a conflict. On the other hand, though, if the Turks fire the first shot at Israel and then they don't get Article 5 protections, then the Israelis are going to go, "Oh, I've been grievously wounded. America, you must fulfill your end of the defensive bargain or the defensive pact that we have with y'all. Y'all must come over and help us against the Turks." And they're not going to have, the Turks will not have Article 5 protections in that scenario. So then with the Israelis, we either have to go, "Yeah, we're going to help y'all beat Turkey's ass, and we're going to have to beat an ally's ass," or we're going to have to go, we're going to stand back, and then we break the pact we have with the Israelis.
NATO would never declare Article 5 against Israel. They would never do that. They would. It's not possible. I believe Article 5 has to be unanimous, doesn't it?
Let me actually read the NATO charter. I need to see if it does need to be unanimous, because I'm not
I'm,
really
I'm pretty
sure.
sure. I'm pretty sure it is unanimous for Article 5, and if it is unanimous, that means that's impossible. You'll never get every single NATO ally on the same page of like you going against Israel. That's not going to happen.
Let's see. The parties agree that an armed attack. So the parties agree that an armed attack shall be considered an attack against them all, such each of them in exercise of the rights of individual or collective self-defense recognized by Article 51 of the United Nations, will assist the party or parties so attacked by taking forthwith individually and in concert with the other party such actions as it deems necessary. So it doesn't look like it has to be unanimous. It looks like each country can kind of make their own decision on what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, because it says
Well, not for
individual.
collective defense. If it's collective defense, it has to be unanimous. Like yeah, an individual country can act outside of Article 5 if they're a NATO member, yes, but for the collective defense doctrine to come into play, you can't have some out, some in. That would defeat the whole purpose of Article 5.
But the thing is that they say individually and in concert with other parties, such actions as it deems necessary. So there's an individual decision, nation to nation, of what they deem to be necessary for collective defense, which could be either a full blown military action or next to nothing and just material
Oh no.
support or less.
It's Article 5 has to be unanimous. Every single member has to vote and agree on it, or otherwise it's not a collective defense. I just pulled it up too and verified it.
And what do you pull up to verify that?
Let's see. The Belfer Center for International Affairs is one of them. Also, NATO's website. So it's pretty much determined.
But where does it say that, though, in the NATO Charter, which is the legally binding agreement?
Well, in the first sentence, it says the parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them is considered an attack against them all. So the parties have to agree. The parties are the members.
But the thing is, though, is that it says individually and in concert such actions as it deems necessary.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, that's referring to the actual operation itself. I mean, if some countries want to launch a different style of operation versus others, as long as they've all unanimously voted that Article 5 is to be enacted, that doesn't mean they all have to be on the exact same page. All they know is that Article 5 has been enacted. So they can have separate operations, but Article 5 would be enacted or not if it's unanimous.
Let's see here. I want to make sure, because I don't
I'm very
think.
confident on this one.
Well, I'm pretty sure, man. Like a month ago, you made the argument I'm making.
Oh no, I've never said that wasn't unanimous.
I think you have. Like, I think you said, like, if the U.S. just wanted to, they could say, "Oh yeah, whatever," and then just peace out, basically, of a conflict against the Russians. And I was taking that argument tonight because that was largely what we had debated before and taken as the baseline. And so now it's that everyone has to agree. But what does that mean?
Well,
Because under that sort of a premise, then the Russians could invade Europe, and if for some reason Turkey goes, nah, it's not Article 5, then nobody is able to collectively defend themselves under the NATO charter. It just completely falls apart.
well, no, I'm not. What I was saying then, I said that Europe can act outside of NATO Article 5. Like, for example, if the U.S. decides to throw a wrench in the problem, like let's say Russia invades the Baltics, and then the U.S. is like, well, we're not voting to enact Article 5. We're not in favor of that. The Baltics can fend for themselves. We're not getting involved. We're going to vote against Article 5. But yet Europe is all on board with it. Then Europe could simply act outside of Article 5. They could simply band together unofficially and act against Russia outside the charter. That's what I was saying then.
So we're working under the premise that everybody has to uniformly agree to invoke Article 5 for Article 5 to be invoked, and then everybody has to get involved in fighting directly whatever country we went to war with. Then the only time that Article 5 has been invoked, which would be after 9/11, we should be able to make the assumption that since the war in Afghanistan was a NATO-led conflict, that all parties involved sent troops to Afghanistan. Um, because that would be the only example we have to work off of in realistic practice. So let's go and look if every single country that was in NATO at the time sent troops to Afghanistan, because I think that
It's not
probably.
about sending troops, it's about the vote. They remember they can act in concert or individually, but the vote has to be unanimous.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I see what you're saying now. Okay, so never mind. Still, though, the U.S. can't really sit though. So what we're saying though is that if Israel attacks Turkey, and everyone says, okay, that's Article 5 invocation worthy, and the US goes, no, it's not. And then the US has to openly check the whole of NATO and make the NATO alliance look fairly weak. So depending on what country attacks NATO, the US might just go, nah, we're actually not going to war with them. They can beat NATO's ass, or some NATO state's ass. That completely weakens the alliance to the point it's almost non-existent at that point. That's basically the same situation we're having with the Russians right now. If the Russians attack Latvia, it's basically the same scenario. And if the US goes, that's not really a thing, and then there's no Article 5 protections, the whole NATO alliance is basically just falling apart at that point because there's no public understanding there will be collective defense against an external attack from a nation outside of the alliance.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's the modern concern. I think is that's the argument we've been making for a while. Right now, NATO is extremely fractured. It's extremely, I wouldn't say weak necessarily, but it's not cohesive because the U.S. is throwing a wrench in everything. I would say personally, to get everybody on the same page these days, all these different countries that are NATO members, I would say it's nearly impossible these days, and it shouldn't be impossible. It should be pretty straightforward. If the countries get attacked, it should be simply respond to it. But the situation you're describing though between Turkey and Israel, I mean that's a lot more complex than Russia attacking the Baltics or something like that, or attacking a European country. The Middle East, honestly, like really to be straight up honest, I'm not even really sure why Turkey's even in NATO. To be perfectly honest, Turkey's a country that has its own interest in the Middle Eastern region, and it's kind of a little bit different than the other European countries when it comes to that. So it kind of doesn't really mesh well with the way NATO was supposed to function.
But the thing is, though, but what we're saying, though, so let me ask you some questions. So, if the Russians attack, if an external country conducts an armed attack against NATO and the current state that it's in right now, and for some reason there is no collective defense that's enacted, I'm talking about a direct missile or drone attack or an armed invasion into a NATO state, and for some reason a country like the United States decides not to respond, the NATO treaty basically means nothing and it's going to fall apart as far as public belief is concerned because everyone's going to know that you can't count on it anymore, correct?
Yeah, 100%.
So if the Israelis do the same thing with the Turks and they attack the Turks first preemptively because of their threats, and then Turkey invokes Article 5, it's an external country outside the NATO alliance conducting an attack on a NATO state, and then we do the very same thing, doesn't that completely destroy the alliance in a whole other in the very same regard, just with a different foreign actor?
I don't think so because I think there'd be a lot more than just the United States voting no on that. Hypothetically, I think a lot of other European countries would probably vote no because they wouldn't want to go against Israel. I don't think it'd be as like cohesive as you'd think. If Turkey said we want to vote on Article 5 because we've gotten attacked by Israel, I think there'd be a lot more dissenters to that than you believe.
I don't really think so. Because I mean, like the dialogue and the discussion about the Israelis in Europe is very different than it is here in America. In America, there are people who believe that the Israelis are the greatest ally of the country. In Europe, on the other hand, they more so harp on the crimes against humanity and the human rights concerns that have been alleged that the Israelis are conducting in the West Bank and elsewhere, in the surrounding territories around the state of Israel. So there's not really as much positive goodwill in Europe for the Israeli position that there is here in the United States. So if we go, if the Israelis attack the Turks, they're not looking at it as, oh, the cool Israelis just attacked the evil Turks or the questionable Turks. They're looking at it as the very questionable Israelis just attacked the questionable Turks, but we have a defensive alliance with the Turks, and the Turks just asked us to oblige them and obligate our duties under the defensive alliance. That's how they're going to be looking at it. And so that's not really a
I think there's only a handful. Like France is one of the NATO countries that's a little bit on the fence with Israel. France usually takes a stand against Netanyahu's government quite often. I think Spain's another one as well. But outside of that, though, generally most people are on the same page as Israel. Outside of that, like France and Spain are kind of outliers in that nature. On one respect, I kind of respect that because they're willing to go against the status quo. But at the same time, though, I don't think that translates across to most of the NATO alliance. I don't think so.
But the thing is, though, is that if the Israelis attack Turkey regardless, and the Turks declare Article 5, which they have a right to under the Charter, and absolutely nobody votes on it, the NATO alliance has basically just died right then and there. There is no real
I wouldn't say
defensible.
so. No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, if as long as you hold a vote and it's not unanimous, I mean, Article 5 is not enacted, so that's the end of the story. NATO's still intact. They voted against Article 5. They weren't unanimous, and that just NATO goes on.
But then there's consequences to that. Like, for example, the Iranians could get the idea, oh well, it's like if they weren't willing to go to war with the Israelis, maybe we can conduct a missile attack on Mesmer Air Base in Bulgaria and blow up a couple of U.S. aircraft and maybe a few Bulgarian ones, and they probably won't fulfill their obligations under Article 5 then either. Then we're just
Oh
inviting
no,
people to
no.
start testing the NATO alliance.
I don't hate Turkey, but at the same time, we have to recognize that Turkey is in the Middle East region. They have a different prerogative, like dealing with that region of geopolitics. Europe is a little bit different. If a European country, like legitimately, like in Central Europe, was attacked, that's a whole nother ball game than Turkey getting attacked by Israel. Like a whole different ball game.
I don't know, man, because I mean the Iranians already attacked Incirlik Air Base in Turkey twice, and also RAF Air Base Akrotiri in Cyprus, which both of them are provided NATO Article 5 protections, and there was absolutely no Article 5 vote called. So the Iranians already know that they can try and attack, and they were able to successfully hit RAF Akrotiri, and there won't even be an Article 5 invocation. So if the Israelis are able to attack the Turkeys, the Turks, not the turkeys, and like if the Israelis are able to grease a whole bunch of turkeys, and nobody comes to the defense of Turkey, why in the world would the Iranians not then think, well, if they didn't declare Article 5 when we attacked them before, we could just attack them again, and they're going to do quite literally nothing this time because they weren't even willing to do anything to defend against the Israelis.
I don't know, man. I think I'm going to have to disagree to agree. Agree to disagree.
What the hell?
Look, I said the thing. I said, listen, you know the thing. Are you
My
okay?
fellow
I mean, are
Americans.
you on something? I mean, what are you on, Jack? I mean, are you on something? He's on nothing. He's on nothing. He's on some bullshit. That's what he's on right now. It's some strange stuff he's on. I'm not sure what he's on. Nobody's really sure. Nobody really knows, but it's a strange thing, sir.
Honestly, man, I think like by the way, I had a fun time with the debate. But what does the audience think about that if we put it up to a poll, like just to have a
Well,
poll
now you're
on
trying
it?
to put me against you. You're trying to make them choose. You're
No,
trying to make them choose. But I'm
no,
a lovable character.
no. I'm not. Well, what am I, a hateable character? Like, man, like what does that mean?
Why do you have to assume the worst?
Well, I mean, but I'm a lovable character implies with the but that apparently I'm not. I was like, what the hell? But I'm not trying to verse me versus you. I'm just trying to see what the audience thinks about that because I'm seeing everyone say half of them are agreeing with you, half of them are agreeing with
So
me.
what's the question?
Um, would any let's see here, how will we word this? Would any foreign attack against NATO, hell, I don't even think this is going to meet the character requirement. If NATO does not respond to a foreign attack, does that destroy the alliance? Yes, no, maybe. Maybe something like that if it fits.
I don't know about that, though. I don't really. That's not really in the purview of what we were talking about. I mean, that's depends. Like if like I was saying, if Central Europe's attacked, that's different than Turkey.
Well, yeah, but my position is that any foreign attack by any foreign nation outside of NATO that is unresponded to largely degrades or erodes the entire alliance. And you're saying, well, it doesn't because it depends on a case by case scenario. So then that's kind of where the poll would be at least from what I'm thinking, is does any foreign attack that's not responded to destroy the NATO alliance? And if Israel doesn't, in that hypothetical scenario, then people will say, no, it doesn't. And if it does matter, then people will say, yes, it does. At least that's how I'm looking at it
How
with the
about
poll.
this? If NATO fails to enact Article 5, if Israel attacks Turkey, would NATO collapse due to that? Due to that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, put that one up.
Yeah, I'll write that up here in just a second.
All right, folks. So he's writing that up right now, and we're going to have that poll up, and we'll see what the results are. So everyone, put in your ideas in the live chat right now of what you think the results are going to be before we get the results. Not that we're betting on them or anything, but also I saw Bernardo Crescini say you both are right. Well, then you can vote maybe. Like I think that would be the vote category you would have to go in. But I think Matthew's wordage of the poll is pretty good. So we'll see what people's opinions are of that. Because I think it's an interesting question, because I'm trying to say, folks, that we should be balancing the two allies and not trying to make it to where we have to choose one or the other or show preference. So we should try and avoid a confrontation. While on the other hand, Matthew's taking a more hands-off approach and saying that's really something more so for them to figure out, and maybe by doing so, it will lead to de-escalation by our uninvolvement. So we'll see what the poll results are here in a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, though, it is time for us to get on and into all of the additional questions. And so a huge thanks to you once again for support, Carlos Santiago. Your super chat invited not only a very big rabbit hole, but a poll as well. Probably the biggest bang for a buck a super chat's gotten in a while. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Game Theory once again, and thank you, Game Theory, once more tonight for that support. He said, is it naive for youth to expect older generations to care about their future when our hyper-capitalist system funds endless billions for Ukraine and Iran conflicts while domestic safety nets get gutted? And what's your take on the divide? Honestly, Game Theory, my take on it is we don't have to choose between either or. I think mismanagement is the reason why we're having a budgeting problem in this country. It's mismanagement over the course of decades at this point. I remember back, I think it was during Bill Clinton's administration, there was actually a surplus for a brief while. We weren't in a massive deficit for the federal budget. Right now, it hit 40 billion. At least in theory, it hit 40 billion, which is the worst it's ever been in the history of the country. So I would say we should not choose between supporting our allies and preventing a war from starting in Europe simply to take an easy blame, to play the blame game, basically, with the whole situation domestically here in the United States. We certainly have problems here in the U.S., but I think the problem is not that we don't have the money for it. It's so there's not proper management spending the money properly that we do have. That's what I would say. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally agree, actually, because generally the government welfare programs, if we want to call them that, or for example, as you were saying, let's see, domestic safety nets, if we want to call them that, the welfare program safety nets, whichever way you would like to call it. Huh?
Sorry, I meant to say trillion earlier, by the way. I think I said billion by accident.
Oh yeah, it's tens of trillions. But beyond that, though, I would say generally the problem is it's mismanagement and misappropriation of the funds, because like Matthew was saying, in the Clinton administration we actually saw that there was a budget surplus where the US government was not spending as much as it was taking in tax revenue, and it was also able to pay off some of the debt and some of the interest as well along with the debt, although it was mostly interest that they were trying to pay off at that point. But regardless of that, though, if you look at other governmental administrations, like for example the Reagan administration cut a large amount of social programs, but that was one of the first administrations that we ever saw that the national debt started to skyrocket. I believe in that first tenure of a president that could work off of a significant national deficit, I believe that during Reagan, the debt finally rose to $1 trillion, which was the largest it had ever been in national history at that point, although he had gone through and cut a great deal of social programs as a part of his domestic policies. So it doesn't really show that it is necessary for us to be able to carry on a conflict and we have to cut off social programs as a result. It shows that it's more so a mismanagement of funds. And I would say that it's also more so something to do with the domestic side of things, because not to get into the domestic political side of things, but there are two different ways of looking at any sort of social safety nets or welfare programs, as some people would call it in America. Some people look at it as a just and also righteous government service that's provided to help out the citizenry and to try and improve their standard of living, even for the lowest social or income strata inside the country. Other people look at it as a waste of unnecessary expense, and the people who live off of welfare or use these social safety nets are nothing but leeches and parasites on the government that are robbing them of their hard-earned money and tax dollars and are just going to the welfare program and running their pockets. That's the two different ways that people look at it in the country, and that's why it's not really particularly about the spending, like where they're stripping social programs to go pay for something else. It's more so about just the thought process behind it. And just to be honest, the current administration looks at welfare and social security programs as a complete waste of money and something that people don't deserve because everyone's just leeching off of it and is a bum that's using it. That's kind of the truth of how they look at that. But then also you get into the other camp where sometimes it's looked at as such a good, then they actually have to run into a deficit to provide for it, and then you have to find a way to actually financially balance it all and also pay for other things that are necessary like defense. And then it really becomes more so of an appropriation and spending issue, more so than one of whether we have to weigh social institutions or warfare to be more important in terms of funding, if I'm making any sense in that. Hopefully I am. But still, a big thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well, Game Theory. And I'd have to say it's a really interesting question. My personal take on it is that social security nets are get a far great deal more value. We get a far great deal more value out of them as a country than we do a disservice. And I will admit, folks, that there are people who, of course, abuse welfare systems and social security nets. There are people who are going to abuse every system out there on the planet. But at the same time, though, there is a humongous human benefit that we were able to get out of knowing that this nation that has so plenty does not have people who are starving in the street that cannot find a job. And there are people out there who have had children that they may not be able to provide for, and those children are not becoming malnourished and possibly dying in their homes because there's no one that is there to be able to take care of them and provide for them. That's what I would generally say. I'm one who looks at it more from a compassionate mindset because, yes, the people who abuse the system are egregious, and I believe that we should always be, as a government principle, finding these people who are abusing the system and punishing them for abusing a system of good. But at the same time, we cannot punish all of those innocents who require that system and need that system to be able to hang on just because of the guilt and the ne'er-do-welling of a few people who are abusing the system. That's how I personally look at it. Because I would hate to know, folks, that if someone really ran low on their luck, the government was going to, instead of being there to try and help them out a little bit, they were going to be there to put their boot in that person's face and basically kick them on down into the pit and into death, or into basically living off of the streets for the rest of their life. That's not really something I like to think the United States would take as a moral position if someone was truly down on their luck and about to be out of the works, basically. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on to our poll real quick to get this one out of the way. It says, if NATO fails to enact Article 5 if Israel attacks Turkey, would NATO collapse due to it? 50% said no, NATO would remain intact, while 35% said yes, NATO would fall apart. So it looks like a majority are agreeing with my side of it here on this, which I would have to stand by it on that and say that I still think that's the case, and I don't think that NATO would fall apart. Now, I don't think as many people as Andrew thinks would probably jump on the bandwagon against Israel. I have a feeling that most of NATO would probably be steadfast with the Israelis, despite an attack on Turkey. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would still be within my camp of the 35%. I'm not going to lie, folks. I thought I was kind of going to get steamrolled there. That didn't end up being as bad as I thought it was going to be. But beyond that, though, I would still stay with the 35%. Really, honestly, I wouldn't even want us to get into a position where we would have to find that out. I would rather the U.S. be heavily involved in managing the escalations and de-escalating the two nations before we ever had to find out whether that was going to happen or not. Because I would hate to be in a position where we think that NATO will remain intact if the Israelis attack Turkey, and then it turns out that it doesn't remain intact and it completely shatters, all because of the Israelis. Then we're absolutely up the creek without a paddle, and I would rather us not even get to that situation to figure out what really would happen. So I would be more in the camp of getting actively involved between the two countries right now as the United States and de-escalating it through the U.S. presence and also U.S. force within the region. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to, let's see, he goes to Chef Danny B. And thank you very much, Chef Danny B, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that. He said, "Good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here, and hope you are doing well. And I hope the beautiful people of the LSA are also doing good. And how can Agent Orange say that we're making progress in Iran? This administration is making the U.S. look so weak. LOT LSA."
And long live the Lee Spring Army. And I didn't really. I was like Agent Orange. I was like, oh. But to answer your question, Chef Danny B, chef of the LSA, by the way. He just makes up stuff. I mean, honestly, like like the bloviating that he does has been forever, and I find it interesting that a lot of people are catching on to it now because honestly, folks, I was getting tired of it by the end of his first term as president because everything that someone does cannot be the biggest, greatest, and grandest thing that's ever been done in the history of the country. It's just completely impossible. I mean, there's some things that some people do that are great, like Teddy Roosevelt was really good at supporting and also advocating for things like the Food and Drug Act and also enacting the antitrust laws to bust up the monopolies that exist in the United States. But that didn't mean that Teddy Roosevelt was the greatest in every way. He may have not been the greatest wartime president. He may have not been the greatest foreign policy president. It's like there are others that I would say out there that have done way better than Teddy Roosevelt in those regards. So that would be my personal opinion on that. It's just more so the norm for the president to say that he's doing the greatest and grandest things on the planet, even if the results are amazing, good, decent, indifferent, or terrible. Like he'll just say that it's the greatest thing that's ever been done in the history of mankind.
Yeah. He can say whatever he wants. I just hope that the American people use their sense, like, and judge it, like, from an objective standpoint. Like, he obviously, like a politician's going to say, whatever they need to say to get reelected, or for him, he really can't get reelected, really. Like, it's not legally permissible. So he doesn't have to worry about getting reelected, but he's worried about his public image. So hopefully, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure why he's trying so hard to put forth a good image, considering that he can't get reelected. I'm not really sure what the problem is. Usually when presidents get to this point, they really don't give a damn at this point. They're like, yeah, if people don't like it, that's just tough for the most part. Usually the only reason they try to keep on good pages with people is to try to get their, whoever they try to appoint as their successor to win the next election. But I'm not sure if he's so worried about that.
I think it might be that there's a lot of pressure on him from the party, the GOP, telling him you can't tank the whole party just because you want to.
He
And
wouldn't give a damn.
well, I mean, he might not give a damn, but it's like if the GOP turns against him, and say hypothetically he starts doing things that are so destructive to their party, they decide in Congress to start moving along with another group on articles of impeachment, then that's something that might be enough to actually make him worried about the image and going out and saying everything's going great when it's not, because there might be pressure on him in the background from someone somewhere, or he understands that there is a pressure that if he really does that and he doesn't give a damn and he's just like, I want Americans poor and run into the ground, I don't care, that might end up costing him the office prematurely. Because of actions that might be taken in the Congress, because they can, at the end of it all, they can come up with something if they want to get someone out of there. And I think that might be one of the pressures in the background that might be having him out there, if there is no other, that might be making him say, oh, everything's great, outside of his own personal ego and reputation being on the line.
Maybe so, possibly. It's just a strange situation.
It is bizarre. I mean, really it is. But still, a humongous thanks to you for that support, Chef Danny B, chef of the LSA. And I hope that it addresses the question the best I can, at least with the kind of speculation we can come up with. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would never be able to make this channel possible. We would never be able to keep it running. And we would never be able to think about those delicious meals that you're cooking up every day. And I got to say, folks, I tried out a new restaurant today here. And they had a dish on the menu that was like $20. And I was like, oh, that's kind of like expensive looking. I was like, you know what? I'll give it a try. I got it. It literally came, folks, like those catering tray things, like the big, like tin foil things that they have. It came in that. It's enough to feed like a family of four. And it said it was a dish for one person. I was like, oh my God. I was like, who are these people eating here? Like, how big are they? Because I couldn't eat
American.
Man, I couldn't eat a quarter of it, man, before I got full. I was like, damn, this is like 2 days of food for $20.
You just reinforced every European stereotype against Americans that exist.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. If you saw this tray thing, dude, you would be blown away. It's literally the size of like those Costco macaroni and cheese like trays. It's that size, but wider, and it was literally filled to the brim with food for $20. Like the same cost as the Costco macaroni and cheese stuff. I was like, this is insane. I was like, that is unbelievable. I was like, I'm gonna have to eat there more often because that means I'm averaging because I
Oh.
I eat 2 meals a day, folks. I eat 2 meals on average a day, and that thing has about 4 meals worth of what my average serving is when I sit down. So that is $20 to eat for 2 days right there. That's $5 a meal. That is a steal right there. You can't even get that kind of value at Taco Bell anymore. But still, with that, we are
Man,
on.
I've been eating light recently. Like I realized about 4 or 5 days ago, I was like, dang man, I've been sort of like not adhering to my budget very good. I sort of realized that I was like, I'm kind of going a little over budget here. I got to reel back, so I've started eating light. Like today, like I just a little Chipotle taco for like $10, and that was about it. And then some freezer food after that. I'm going light.
Man, honestly, man, I need to go light myself, man. It's just, man, I gotta say though, the food quality around here is immense. Like you can go and get anything around here. What's even crazier, folks, is that I hate to say this too. I've had the barbecue out here in Salt Lake City, and the barbecue out here is as good as it is in Alabama. Like it's on up there. Like they also come up with some crazy stuff too. I had this brisket grilled cheese sandwich about a week ago. And it was amazing. It was so good. And the macaroni and
You
cheese
like
that
grilled
came with,
cheese?
man, honestly, man, like a grilled cheese with brisket in it, man, that's unbelievably good.
Hmm.
You wouldn't even know how good that was.
You seem like the type that like grilled cheese.
What does that mean?
I mean, it seems like you're a person of culture.
Person of culture. What does this mean here? There's an innuendo behind this.
And that's exactly what it says. It's face value.
Tell me, folks in the chat, there seems to be something else behind this here. I
Man,
feel
you're
it.
paranoid.
No, no.
Jeez, man.
Well, man,
I
the way
said,
you
he
said it,
seems like
you
he like.
said
I said,
you said,
I
"Oh, you
said, he
like
seems
grilled
like a person like.
cheese, do
He
you?"
seemed like a person that like grilled cheese. I don't even know why you could take that badly.
Do you not hear the way you said it, man? Like, man, like it was like you saying, "Man, I like a BMW," and that'd be like me saying, "Man, this is a guy who likes a BMW." You'd be like, "What do you mean by that?" Because it's the tone you said it in, man. You said it like, "Oh, this is a guy who would like that, isn't it?" I see people are picking up on that right there. Like that's exactly
What
what
does
you
it
meant.
mean?
You know what it means. People are saying it all up in there. Like it sounded like you had something behind that.
Nah.
Nah, see, no, see, everyone's saying that there. No, everyone's saying that. Yeah, everyone's saying exactly what I'm thinking there. Uh-huh. Man, nah, you're not pulling that one on me, man. You're not pulling the gaslighting fast one on me. Nah, man, that was a jab. But anyway, so that we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Blind Man, who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Blind Man, for the $50 support. Blind Man said, long time enforcers, glad to be back. And Saab released the concept of the A3001 autonomous aircraft as the European counterpart to the U.S. Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program, with A1 as default, and A2 and A3 designs, with first flight planned for 18 months.
Oh, wow, that is actually really cool looking. Pretty neat. Honestly, kind of looks a lot like the F-47 in a way, at least the front end of it. That is really neat, actually. And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for support and sharing that with us. And hopefully we'll hear that it makes it off of the ground and goes far, because Saab really does need that contract money. It really does. But still, a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And with that, we're on the next one.
Also, by the way, I see everybody talking about food and stuff. I'm on a starving diet, folks. That's what I'm on now. I'm on a starving diet personally. I'm just like, eating very little. I think today I probably have like 1,500 calories. And I should have more than that. I think for my metabolism, so I should probably have like at least 2,500 a day. But I fell under that today. I didn't care. Like right now, I'm actually doing pretty decent right now on my starving diet to a certain degree. I don't have to be on the starving diet, but I like to stay under budget. I'm not a person that likes to spend extravagantly and stuff like that. So the starving diet works. It makes me feel better. But moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Thomas D'Orazio, puts in a 22. And thank you, Thomas, as well. He said, always appreciate the effort and dedication around the work you two are doing, and thumbs up.
And a big thanks to you for support, Thomas D'Orazio, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help us to be able to put all of the work and effort that we do into the show every single night to keep this thing running, keep it on air, and keep the news rolling. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
Also, someone said nice gaslighting title. Well, I mean, if you listen, you wouldn't think that. But our next one here goes to Truck and Chef, who puts in a 20, and thank you, good sir, as well. And Truck and Chef said, "Good evening, enforcers. Here's a rabbit hole. Syria. How did it get this way, and why won't it change?" And I would imagine that's a big rabbit hole. And good luck, enforcers, and thank you, and LSA, and best news anywhere. Honestly, I'll say my part real quick. The way Syria is right now is because there's too many damn competing interests in Syria. Everybody wants to start a little group and try to take charge. It's like there has to be like some people that are the leaders, and there has to be followers. Every country operates like that. Not everybody can be a leader, and there has to be enough intelligence to understand it has to be that way. That's simple as it gets. Too many competing groups. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that Syria is a very interesting part of the world, and to explain why they're where they are today, we have to travel back to the end of the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottoman Empire, unlike what a lot of people believe, actually had a significant amount of religious tolerance in it up until the very end part of its history, which would be the First World War. That's when a lot of y'all will have heard and known of the Armenian genocide. But those sorts of actions that were largely, what would we call it? Well, let's see. What would it be called? I think it is called actually xenophobic. I believe that's a hatred of aliens or something. But beyond that, though, largely the actions of some sort of racial supremacy of the Turkish people and whatnot were brought about by the Young Turks after their rise to power in the mid 1900s, right before World War One. But before that, they were largely religiously tolerant and would allow for other religions such as Jews, Christians, and others to live inside the territory of the Ottoman Empire, but they would have to pay a special tax, and they were generally kind of treated like second-class citizens, so there was some segregation there, but unlike some other countries in the region, they'd actually allow you to live there. So fast forward to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire in 1918 and 1919, and the British and the French come up and they gobble up everything that exists here in the northern part of the Middle East. What is now modern-day Kuwait, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel were actually divided up into different regions by the French and the British under the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which then divided this area up and turned it into a multitude of mandates. And these mandates required that by, I believe it was 1947 to 1945, all of these different mandates would be formed into independent countries, and it was the job of Britain and France to get these little regions ready for their time as independent countries. Syria was one of them, and Syria and Lebanon were managed both by the French. And the French tried to figure out how to actually manage the country somewhat well, and they decided to use, like many colonial countries and imperial countries did at the time, the ethnic groups of the country to figure out which one to control it. And they found out that the Sunni Arabs make up the large majority of Syria. So they put the Sunni Arabs in charge of the country, although you had the Kurds of the north, which are not Sunni Arabs. You also had the Alawite Arabs of the coast, and then you also had the Druze people of the south. So you had some very large ethnic enclaves inside of this country, but the French largely groomed the Sunni Arabs, and they found the Assad family, and they put the Assad family in charge. So when they left, the Assad regime was already in charge of Syria by that time. And because they had unlimited power and they had the largest ethnic group of the country behind them, they started to run the country with an iron fist because they could always lean on the Sunni Arabs for support. And that continued on with the oppressive regimes of Bashar al-Assad's father, and then Bashar al-Assad himself, and his father before him. And then Bashar al-Assad saw that during the Arab Spring, which was sort of a, let's see here, what would we call it? A religious, ideological sort of a radical uprising throughout the whole of the Middle East. It's kind of like the revolutions of 1848. It sprung into being, and then we saw that because of that, the Syrian nation then descended into civil war. What was largely the driving point of the civil war was the injustices of the Assad regime, which was looked at as a post-colonial holdover, and so some sort of Western influence on the region, and that an Islamic nation should have Islamic leaders chosen by Islamic peoples to lead them. And that was generally one of the main driving points of the beginning of the Syrian civil war, which then led into a fracturing, or a balkanization is the best way to explain it, of the whole of Syria into multiple different small factions. And we finally saw that at the end of the Syrian civil war, it was the Tahrir al-Sham, the HTS, under al-Jilani, who is now the leader of Syria, that finally swept away Assad and all of the other factions and unified the country under, funnily enough, another Sunni Arab, using the majority Sunni Arab population to subjugate and oppress the other minority populations of Syria to maintain control. So they replaced Assad through the civil war with Assad 2.0. He's basically the same guy. So that is generally the reason why Syria exists as it does today, but they still have a lot of holdovers because Assad's government, well, actually Jelani's government, isn't really firmly held in place. They still have a lot of holdovers of all of those different small factions throughout the country that are still causing significant issues and also uprisings in some limited areas.
And who knows how long al-Jilani's government's going to last. You know, all it takes is some young guy to come along and overthrow him, and then it's back into chaos.
Man, really, it honestly is very very fragile like that. It might be that this sort of regime lasts. It just might be that there's a coup and he's overthrown and a new person in his government takes reins of the country, maybe, or it could completely descend into civil war again because
Yeah.
there are a lot of different factions that would like to break apart from the Jelani regime at this point.
You know, there's an idea out there, like for example, like people tend to get addicted to chaos, like a little bit. Like if you've lived your entire life kind of in chaos and nothing's ever been stable, you can kind of get addicted to that because that's all you kind of know. So when stability arrives, it can seem unnatural to a large degree. I feel like that's kind of like what Syria is. Like I'm not saying that people there don't want peace, but they're so accustomed to their country being in a constant state of, chaos and just disorganization and just a free for all, basically, that it seems like there's no huge push toward normalizing just a calm peacetime inside of Syria. Because, like I said, there's too many factions fighting with one another, and they all have very strong ideologies competing with one another. So I don't know. Like I just don't see. I don't see Syria. I just don't see the Middle East ever being peaceful. It's never been peaceful, and I don't think it ever will be. That's just being real.
Well, it was peaceful for a time.
What was that, BC?
No, that was AD. I mean, like from the time of about, let's see, 1600 to about the early 1800s. I mean, it was a fairly peaceful period in the Middle East. There wasn't really a lot going on there.
Maybe a long time ago. That was a long time ago.
Well, yeah, but I mean, still, the region's been at peace at some point. I mean, when the Ottoman Empire controlled everything in the area, and they also had the caliphate in Istanbul to tell all of the Muslim followers of the faith of what they were doing and how to put them all on the same page. It was a relatively peaceful time. Really, the time of chaos came when the Ottoman Empire became destabilized in the mid 1800s and then started their downward spiral to their collapse in the early 1900s after the First World War. And then after that, after the complete collapse of the Ottoman Empire, it descended into total chaos and it's never returned from it since.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. Like it seems to me like you know, I think the reason also why there's so many competing interests in Syria is that people, like I see some people saying, you can get addicted to the chaos, like I was saying earlier, and maybe they just like the mayhem and the chaos. It could be. I mean, why do all these different people keep popping up and forming new competing groups that want to take over if they want peace? It's like just like if even if it's not a perfect, like Al Jelani's like government's obviously nowhere near perfect. In fact, I would say it's quite bad actually. Just try to work with it the best you can and try to hope that maybe it stabilizes at some point, or maybe when Jelani leaves, maybe you can get somebody more stable in there or something. But I have a feeling it won't stay that way for long.
If we found a way to unite the entire Islamic world around a new caliphate, like, no, I'm not even kidding. I'm actually serious about this. If we found a way to actually unite the entire Islamic world, at least the Sunni Arabs, around a new caliphate like they had during Ottoman times, that basically was kind of like their own version of the papacy, because that's basically what a caliphate is. I feel like that would actually do a pretty decent bit to kind of return a semblance of stability, because at least that one caliphate could kind of rein in all of the Sunni Arabs from going in a million different directions and kind of solidify them all under one religious dogma. That actually would do a good bit.
Impossible.
It
Impossible. There's too many ethnic differences. There's too many, even within Islam. Like there's too many different groups of Islam to try to make that work. There's like so many moving parts to that, so many different factions. It's not cohesive. Like when they say, "Oh, it's Islamic nations," that's deceiving. Like yes, they're technically Islamic nations, but they're so far apart. Like some of these nations are from each other. They might as well not even be Islamic nations. They might as well be completely different religions.
But they did it before, though, and it wasn't that long ago either. It was only about 130 years ago that all the stuff kind of started to unravel slightly, and it wasn't even massive then. It was really massive after the collapse of the Ottomans. It's like if we could, like, it's in generational well, not generational. It's in historic memory as of recently. It's like you could do it. I mean, like, but the thing is, though, is it's like I don't like. I think it would be largely impossible though, because it's like if you founded a caliphate in Turkey, then people in Syria are gonna be like, well, that's not really our caliphate. That's like the Turkish caliphate, and it might have Turkish governmental influence, so they might just be trying to con us or something. I gotta say, folks, when you really look back at it, it is kind of a shame that we didn't really make sure that the Ottomans stuck around, because if the Ottomans had stuck around until the present day, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the problems in the Middle East we have right now, because a lot of the problems came from collapsing their centralized theological control in their caliphate in the Ottoman Empire, and then all of these Islamic peoples that had centralized leadership for 1,000 years, just like the Roman Catholic Church, they didn't have it anymore, and then they started to go, well, what are we really? Like, what are we actually doing? And then they all started coming up with a million different answers, and then they would largely battle it out with each other to figure out which answer was the best, because might makes right. And now we have the problems that we have here. I mean, honestly, I think it would be impossible. But in a fictional world, if you could make that work, that'd probably actually bring back some semblance of stability to at least the Sunni Arab populations of the region.
Yeah, you always gotta be cautious of the one who says they can, unify everybody. Like, I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's like, well, why wouldn't you like the one that always unifies somebody? But, there's been, several people that's come along and said, "I'll be the one to unify all the nations," and stuff like that, and usually it never pans out, and also there's usually some other ulterior motive or something going on behind it, like, typically.
Yeah, true. That's true. Sadly, it would never work in the modern day, but it would be a stabilizing thing if it did. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $30 support from U.S. Navy LST alum, and thank you very much, good sir, for the $30 support. We do appreciate that. He said, "I appreciate the brotherly love on the program, and I agree with your views on how bad the Iran war has been managed, and how does the IRGC get defeated with no boots on the ground, and I just can't see a good end to this otherwise, and thoughts."
I don't really know if there's a way to defeat them without putting boots on the ground. We might have to put boots on the ground in the channel, well, more so the Strait Islands in the Hormuz, to be able to bring the situation under control. But I don't know. I mean, like, I don't really see a way at this point that we might be able to win without putting boots on the ground. I think boots on the ground would be required to some degree, but I would try and keep it at a minimum as much as possible, for a lot of reasons. But it's a pretty messed up sort of a situation at this point. It's not looking too good. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Punisher of the North, and thank you very much as well for that 20. They said, "Enforcers rock," and thank you, by the way. He said, "During the intro, Enforcer Daniel asked me to send this to you. It's LSA together for victory," and I repeat, LSA together for victory. And he can read very well for 5 years old, and also said LSA protects Ukraine, and LLT LSA.
Hey, that's really cool. And LSA together for victory. That's what I always like to say. It's in our intro. Because everyone here in the LSA is united around the concept of seeing the Western world succeed to victory. And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to your support, Punisher in the North, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, it's really good to know that Enforcer Daniel is here with us tonight and watching. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, someone just came in here a second ago and said they were directing this to me, apparently. They said, "Forget how pro-Israel one of y'all is," referring to me, I think. "The only answer is for Israel to stop bombing people, stupid." But here's the problem, though. Here's the way I look at it. I don't agree with everything Israel does. I've said that before. I certainly don't. I think the way they handle the Gaza situation is atrocious, and also the way they handle generally, military operations is kind of overboard, to kind of put that mildly. But at the same time, though, it's the same way I look at Ukraine. Ukraine is basically a buffer between Russia and Europe and NATO, and it's important for us to support them for that reason. Do I like the Ukrainian people personally? Yes, but that's not the primary motivation behind helping Ukraine. It's about our national interest. Same thing with Israel too. That's our launching point for launching attacks against Iran and also projecting power in the Middle East. And that's why Israel's important to the United States. Not necessarily like because I just absolutely love the Israeli people. I like the Israeli people as much as any other country on the planet. But it's more about our national interest. That's why I think the way I think about it.
I mean, honestly, I would agree with that sort of a position. Because while I say, and I feel like I'm a little bit more candid about the Israelis than Matthew, because both of us generally think that the Israelis are something of an unreliable ally to a degree. They're still an ally, and they still serve a beneficial purpose for the United States and the region. Now, do I like people in say these countries? Sure, but I mean, if I'm being entirely honest with you, I like Chinese people. I think Chinese culture is very fascinating and very interesting, and its culture is rich and deep. It's lasted for thousands of years, and they have a very fascinating history to go with it. But that does not mean that my personal preference or bias towards the Chinese as a people and a culture is going to override my sentiments in foreign policy for the People's Republic of China, which is what we deal with today. I don't deal with Chinese people at the Chinese Lunar New Year when we deal with the People's Republic of China. We're dealing with the People's Republic of China as a communist state, or an authoritarian state more so in its actual sense, and that makes them an enemy of the Republic for a myriad of different reasons, and also because of their own national goals. On the other hand, when we talk about countries like Turkey and Israel or others in the region, we're not talking about them as in, do we like them, like as people? That doesn't matter in foreign policy. We're talking about them as in, what kind of a situation does the United States have with them? Do we stand to benefit from that relationship? Do we stand to gain nothing from that relationship? Or do we stand to lose something from the relationship? And in terms of Israel and Turkey, to address them both, in my personal opinion, we actually gain value out of both of our strategic relationships with the Turks and the Israelis. But that also means that that has to be our preceding notion. That it cannot be that, oh, I have a personal bias against the Israelis for one reason or another, so I don't really like them as a country and I'm going to screw them over because of my personal preference, or the Turks, or vice versa. We are going off of the foreign policy principle of, does this country inherently have any benefit to the United States of America in some way? It can be money, it can be immaterial, it can be something. And the answer for both of them is yes. And that's why we support the Israelis, is because the Israelis are fighting the conflict with us against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the Islamic Republic of Iran is an enemy of the Republic, simply put. Now, does that mean the Israelis are perfect? No. Do I think what the Israelis are doing in the West Bank is highly questionable from what I've seen online? Yes, I would say. Do I think that their rules of engagement largely allow for significant amounts of civilian collateral to the point that it could be described as war crimes? I would say that that's definitely borderline right there. But at the same time, we have to balance all of that out in the end in foreign policy, unfortunately, and that means that the Israelis are an ally of the United States of America because we have a common enemy with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So that's really the answer. So I don't really know what's up with the whole thing about Matthew saying, he's a fan of the Israelis, because I mean, if I'm being honest, I have my scruples with the Israelis, but if it came down between Iran and Israel, I'm picking the Israelis because that would make common sense. But anyways, with that, we are on to the
I'm not necessarily I wouldn't go as far as to put myself as a fan of the Israelis. I would just say the Israelis are a friend with benefits, basically, in geopolitics. That's what they are. And that's all I see it as, really. And that's all any geopolitical relationship really is. If anything, if a geopolitical relationship is more than that, then there might be something more at play. If it's more than that, there might be something wrong with that relationship if it's more than that, because geopolitics is a selfish game. It's not about, being friendly or something like that. So if it's in our interest to support a country, we support them. If it's not, we don't. It's that simple.
Also, I'd have to say, folks, that the situation. Let's say it's a hypothetical different world. We're living in an alternate universe where Iran is not run by the Islamic Republic, and they're not funding terrorist groups throughout the whole region that destabilizes the region. And for some reason, the region is stable. At that point, there is no reason to have a humongous strategic relationship with the Israelis. If anything, we're friends with them, but we don't really like if this alternate world is a stable one in the Middle East and we have the same relationship we have right now with the Israelis, there's no reason for us to be giving them significant amounts of military spending and support because there's no reason for it. They have no defensive purpose for it, and also our trade relationship isn't really that large with them either. The United States doesn't stand to gain a lot from them economically either. So then the allyship would be a lot less important in that sort of an alternate world. But we don't live in that world. We live in this one. And in this world, the Israelis are a somewhat important ally to have within the Middle East for military purposes. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have here a $20 support from Inquisitor Holt. And thank you, Inquisitor. He said, hello there. Can you discuss the current state of affairs in the South China Sea and their potential impact on U.S. foreign policy and economics? Also, somebody was asked that question the other day that was in a government position. They couldn't even answer that question, by the way.
Who was it?
I'm not going to say their name, but it was somebody that should have known what they were talking about, and they had no clue, and yet they're like, going to be a senator.
Oh, okay. Man, I love it when the politicians have no clue what they're talking about. It makes everything more juicy. But the whole deal with the South China Sea has to do with this line that this bastard Mao made way back in the day. It's called the 9-dash line. And quite literally what Mao did, because Mao, like many other dictators, is actually quite stupid, is that he looked at the South China Sea and he just dashed a line around and said, oh, that's ours. That's just China's. Why? No reason at all. I mean, there's not even a historical claim China has to the South China Sea. Historically, they've never been there. But because Mao Zedong made this 9-dash line on a map when he was the chairman of the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party, this is now Chinese Communist policy, is that the entirety of the South China Sea is theirs. Because of that, they have been in endless confrontation with every single country that has territorial waters and exclusive economic zones in the South China Sea, to include Vietnam, I believe it would be Malaysia, the Philippines, and also Brunei. They've had a confrontation with every single one of these countries. The Philippines is the one that they have the most confrontations with. And it's because they're just trying to exude exclusive economic zone waters control and also territorial waters control over the whole South China Sea. Mind you all, the South China Sea is also a very important international waterway, as a large amount of shipping traffic actually passes through the South China Sea, and China wants to make sure to use the 9-dash line as a justification to take control of these waters and to be able to control them as territorial waters, to have a large shipping lane under their direct control. That's generally the situation as to why China wants this. We don't want them to have it because, one, it's against international law. Territorial waters can only extend out to, I believe, 12 miles off of the coast, or 10. I'm not exactly sure of the number, but it's only 10 to 12 miles. And exclusive economic zones then expand out to 300 miles, if I'm not mistaken. But there's also interdictions that can happen, like wherever it bumps up on another country's exclusive economic waters, then it has to be sorted out in international court whose waters are whose, which one gets the EEZ and which one doesn't. And the Chinese are trying to violate that completely and turn the open seas into something that can actually become territorial waters of a country, which would be extremely dangerous for us, because a whole bunch of countries could start to do that and could start trying to exude direct territorial and national control over major shipping lanes. So that's why we don't want them to do that. It also has to do with them trying to grow their influence under the One Belt, One Road program, which has largely failed, but they're still trying to bring around into being. So that's really the whole rundown of the situation in the South China Sea and what the Chinese are trying to do and what we're trying to stop them from doing. Also, Gunfox said the EEZ is 200 miles. Thank you for the correction, by the way. But that's why we're trying to stop them from doing that, because it could have a significant amount of repercussions for the United States if they succeed. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Maps Goon the Wall. Okay. But
Whoa!
they put in a 20. Thank you for the support right there. That's it's something right there. You know, yeah, each their own, they say. But Japan does not have the secret sauce. Our government still does the negotiations in FMS cases. And you should try to get a contracting officer or government IP attorney sometime to explain data rights. Very interesting subject.
You sound like you might be one of those. But I do think you're great for the support. But if they don't have the secret sauce, how do they produce them? And if they don't have the secret sauce, why can't the Ukrainians produce them then? If they don't have to have the secret sauce to make them, then we could give out licensing rights really to everybody, and it wouldn't really be that much of an issue, like I was saying originally. But I do thank you for the support and help this channel to keep them running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Med YYC, and thank you for that 20. They said a Canadian here. And news about the tariffs today and our retaliatory tariffs is terrible. While elites on both sides pound their chest, everyday Canadians and Americans struggle.
I would agree, and it's really stupid to try and throw tariffs on Canada. Y'all are one of our largest trading partners on the planet at a national level. I think y'all are the second largest one next to Mexico. And y'all's trade alone accounts for almost, I think it's like 70% of what we get from the whole EU. So it's like if any countries are important for us as trading partners to not upset, it's Canada and Mexico individually, and we go out of our way to upset both of y'all every single day. So a little bit of an issue there. I would agree with you. It's very frustrating and aggravating to watch, but I do thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have here a $20 support from Con45, and Con said the Kyiv Post. They said here, let's see. I sadly kind of can't repeat the claim because I haven't had a chance to read it, and it mentions a specific individual here in the United States. It could get litigious if we read something that's not exactly true. They said the Kyiv Post are reporting that there is White House support behind it. What the hell is going on? Sadly, I haven't heard about that. I'm not really sure what the situation is with that. But Enforcer, what say you?
Unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance as well, but I do thank you greatly for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Gunfox61, and thank you, Gunfox, as well. He said, August the 22nd of 1851, the Al Mug Trophy is awarded for the first time to the winners of a sailing race around England's Isle of Wight. 79 Mount Vesuvius begins stirring on the feast day. Question from the chat.
That Mount Vesuvius stirring on that feast day. Mr. Feast? I got a volcano to blow up on this village, and we're going to see which one makes it out alive.
As you can see, this trophy has a key. Oh, wow.
Man, it's just such disinterest. Man, like it's such an affable amount of disinterest. Wow, this has been going on for quite some time here. Damn. And it's not even being held in America anymore. Like, what do you know? It was held. Actually, interesting enough, it was held in Britain in 1851. And it was a start, like Gunfox said, and then it came to America and stayed in New York City, and then moved to Newport for some reason. Hey, yo, isn't that cigarette? But anyways, it moved to Newport. Apparently, it's smoking on that pack. Up until 1987, and then it moved to Australia, and then just started bouncing around the whole world largely. Very interesting, though, and I got to thank you so much for the support. And that Mount Vesuvius, I tell you. Actually, folks, Mount Vesuvius erupted in the middle of World War II. There's some really cool pictures of it. Mount Vesuvius. Vesuvius eruption. Let me see. Eruption 1944. Here we go. Let me go get these pictures for y'all. They are actually wild. Here are some U.S. B-25 bombers flying past Mount Vesuvius while it was erupting in 1944. That's wild looking.
Mount Vesuvius.
Mount Vesuvius.
It was actually an attack.
It may have been. Man, that's one of those.
Yeah, look at these bombers. Look at those bombers flying. And why do you think bombers are flying over an active volcano? You think there's more to it?
Do you think that the U.S. government was starting a secret project to destroy the Axis with volcanoes?
Oh, yeah. You didn't see that Johnny Quest episode where those people were like flying those saucers out the middle of the thing?
Man, I never saw that one on Gaw.
Man, yeah, I saw that. I knew it was a conspiracy once I saw it.
Man. Honestly, man, you might be onto something there. But you know what else is around this place in Mount Vesuvius?
The dude who has those lizards on a leash?
No, the ancient city of Pompeii. Let me show it to you here. Let me show it to you. Where the hell is it? It's not near this giant oil storage facility. It's somewhere around here. Let me just type it in. Ancient. I'm probably right on top of it. I just don't see it. Ancient Pompeii. Oh, wrong side, actually. I was on the whole wrong side of the mountain. It's south of Naples. Whoopsie daisy. But here's the ancient city of Pompeii, which was actually buried, as you may know, Matthew, in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius that happened, I believe, in 79 AD, or somewhere around there. And so this is one of the best preserved cities in the whole Roman Empire. Take a little gander.
You know, this is where Pompeii is where they came up with the term pompous.
I feel like you might be BSing on that, but you might also be telling the truth. I'm not really sure.
Occasionally, I get something right when I say some BS, and I could be.
It might be, but I'm trying to think. I'm like, maybe it is. But still, it's really cool though because you can see so many interesting things here. The ancient city of Pompeii, like how the Romans built their walls, how they lived their lives, and of course, a lot of them were mummified when the pyroclastic ash and the plume came over the city and buried them all. So there were also a lot of human remains here to show what their final moments looked like. A very interesting sort of thing. But really
Man, they
neat.
said that they said the Romans fell here at Pompeii. They said they fell here, but then Tony Soprano said he is the Romans.
Man, the Romans, where are they now? You're looking at them.
Shut your mouth.
Bupkis. I don't know about that, but I got this. Bing! Man, like to beat that fell off the back of his head. Oh! Man, bro, The Sopranos is a memeable show, man. One of the best memeable shows. Look at this. This is a Roman villa, actually.
Fine art.
I forgot that they have a well-preserved Roman villa here. Quite fascinating stuff. But still, humongous thanks to you once again for support, Gunfox, and sharing an interesting day in history with us. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
We also have a 20 from Gunfox once more, and thank you once more, Gunfox. He said the 406 battle at Florence, Stilichos, the Roman army beats Gothic leader Radagaisus. 1500 Governor Francisco de Bobadilla arrives in the Indies, and soon after arrests and sends former Governor Christopher Columbus.
Oh, yeah. Christopher Columbus, that guy, yeah. I think they're bringing him back around here somewhere. National holiday and all that. But I gotta say, a big thanks to you for the support. Helping this channel to keep it running and sharing even more fascinating history with us, Gunfox. I would have to say those battles are very fascinating there, and also that information about the New World is quite fascinating as well. But with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one that you put in.
We also have another 20 from Gunfox, who said 1864, Union troops and fleet occupy Fort Morgan, Alabama. 1866, Treaty of Prague ends the Austrian-Prussian War. 1906, Cuba's first president, Tomas Estrada Palma, asked for U.S. intervention.
And here it is! Fort Morgan! I've been here before. Myself. Is it a nice place? Nah. Is it cool? Yeah, it's pretty cool, I would say. But beyond that, though, I gotta say, really cool to hear that they actually took that in this day. And also, the Austro-Prussian War of 1906. Oh, sorry, the 1866 Treaty of Prague ends the Austro-Prussian War. Very interesting stuff. But I do thank you greatly once again.
Do you know where the name Morgan comes from? You know how the last name Morgan came about?
Because they wanted more of that Gan.
No, you're close, but not quite. Of course, we only like winners around here. But you know, he was an organ player at one point. This guy was, we'll call him John. He was an organ player, and he wasn't really loud with the organ. He was kind of a soft player of the organ, very quiet, not very loud with it. Understated, they say. So they said, well, we need some more organ. So they called him Morgan.
Damn. Man, that was a stretch. Man, like that was one hell of a
deep.
stretch.
That's deep, but I mean, true story.
Man, I tell you, man. You know what? I'll take your word at it. But a big thanks to your support once again, Gunfox, and sharing another day in history. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Gunfox once more, and he said 1914, the Battle of Mons. General Alexander von Kluck troops force a British withdrawal. General von Hausen executes 612 inhabitants of Dinant, Belgium. German troops plunder Belgium, and Japan declares war on Germany in World War I.
And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for support, Gunfox 61, and those are very interesting days in history, and also why the Germans started to be called savages in the First World Wars, because they would do a couple of things like that. There were atrocities, and then the Allies would go, look at them, they're savages. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from, actually, we need to get a live chat for Gunfox, actually. And that live chat question is going to go to none other than Aprilia, who said, do you think that we could see Russia fall before the spring?
Maybe. There's a possibility, but I think the possibility might actually be on the lower side. But I hope that does address that live chat well, and a big thanks to Gunfox once again for sponsoring it. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And springtime for Putin. That's what apparently it's going to be, I think. But our next one here goes to, let's see here, Cerberus3, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Cerberus, as well. And Cerberus said, I've always been about policy and not politics. Regardless of how you think about one party or another, I want the midterms to shake things up and hold all executive branches actually responsible. So says the Marmot. LSA, one from the chat.
And a big thanks to your support, Cerberus. And I would agree. I'd say that policy is more important than party, and that's generally what I like to select myself is policy over party. And we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And the one from the chat's going to go to none other than N. Hansen, who said, Russia is threatening strikes on civilians, ? Hadn't it been doing that for the past 4 years, though?
To a degree, yes, but these are new because they're going to be trying to strike the food these civilians eat and also other critical infrastructure that keeps them alive. Rather than just outright killing them, they're going to try and deprive them of the goods and materials that keep them alive. So I hope that is addressed to the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from U.S. Navy LST alum once again, and thank you very much once more. They said, another topic, previous months you were talking about severe wildfires in Utah. I hope they're all under control and you're all safe as we battle ours in the PNW.
In the PNW? Is that like peanut butter
Pacific
and jelly?
Northwest.
I was about to say, man, I was about to say that one's going right over my head for some reason. And yeah, it looks like all of our, the Wildmouth fire is claimed to still be ongoing, but it looks like it isn't really. So luckily we kind of got through all the wildfires finally. Whew, thank goodness. But y'all have quite a lot of them going on up there in Washington State. It looks like the one around Spokane finally went out. So that's good. But there's this big one now at Little Giant. Where is this near? This is nearest to Skycomish.
Little Giant.
Didn't we? Oh, no, we didn't go up through there. Nah, we didn't go up through there. Nah. Yeah, we didn't go up through there. But beyond that, though, I do have to say, I hope that y'all have an easy time taking care of those wildfires, hopefully, and hopefully some no winds and heavy rains will come through to try and take it out. Because we finally got through ours and we survived. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
We also have another 10 from Cerberus3, who said, best American holiday food, and why two enforcers please discuss and chat your thoughts. Mine is Thanksgiving and Christmas. Easter is a very sub party. Another for the chat, please. And I like the Christmas cookies. That's what I like. I like Christmas cookies. But enforcer, what say you?
I like homemade dinner rolls. Best thing at the menu. Like, I'm a big bread person. I like bread. And that is some damn good bread right there, those dinner rolls.
We all like that bread. You gotta do what you gotta do for the bread. Sir, a loaf, that's what they call it, sir. A loaf, that's called wealth. That's what that's called, a loaf. Sourdough and all. They said, sir, that's not sourdough. That's sweet dough. That's sweet. You gotta love that sweet dough. It's just stack it up.
They said that my sourdough was the greatest sourdough the world had ever seen. People that were dead from thousands of years ago came out of the ground to go, wow, sir, that's such a great sourdough. It's truly incredible. Wow. Beyond that, a big thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have here a 10 from Scoobs4. And thank you, Scoobs, for that 10. And it did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate that very much. We also have a 10 from Game Theory. He said, you had mentioned your upbringing was rough with some chaos. How did you to dig yourself out of it?
Oh, rough with chaos. I don't know who mentioned that. I don't think that was us. Rough. Well, not really.
How do you know so much, Game Theory? Like, how do you know so much? Like, you get a lot of stuff that I was mentioning this to somebody the other day too. I was like, how do you get so much stuff coincidentally? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like Game Theory knows something more, but like than what we think.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I would say so.
Who are you?
Rough.
What are you doing?
I would say honestly, like rough in what way? Well, it wasn't really material. It was more so an emotional way. And I feel like we kind of just got lucky, maybe. I don't know. But I do thank you greatly for the support and help this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Slim Jim, who said, getting yourselves in trouble by not saying allegedly, tisk tisk. Oh, we've been saying it when we need to say it tonight. I've been listening.
Well, I'm just not really a big fan of doing what other people do, where they're like, they stole the Beppos and then they get sued. Like, I'm not really a big fan of that kind of a thing. So like, that's why we say allegedly. Matthew's more so the bigger proponent of that, but there's a good reason behind it. So that way we don't have every single Tom, Dick, and Harry out there on the planet trying to sue us for everything we say. But a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Cerebros3, and thank you, Cerebros, once more. And we do appreciate that support. I actually read that one off already, but I thought I'd put it in the spreadsheet already, but we do appreciate that. We also have a 5 from Becca B51, said hit that like.
And a big thanks to your support, Becca, and we will make sure to hit that like button. I tell you, I says. And so a big thanks to you once again for support, and how about this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from CK Bold, who said take a live chat.
And a big thanks to you, and we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
And a live chat question goes to John Fronderberg, who said, did you find any confirmation of a munitions train attack in Siberia?
No, we never did, so it seems to be a completely fictitious story. Very unfortunate to see, but many such cases. And so a big thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ian Mitson, who said, I heard, let's see here, I heard that somebody said that an American company isn't giving the Patriot patent away. And they don't have to give the patent away. Like, if a company decides to license a missile out to, like, for example, Ukraine, they're not giving the patent away. They're simply licensing the rights to produce it. So the IP still belongs to the company. It's just that they're giving some people a right to produce it temporarily, that is. But Enforcer, what say you?
They also get royalties off of those that are produced. So it's not entirely without any merit to give them licensing rights. They get to keep the patent and the intellectual property, which the U.S. government will also go out of its way to militantly protect. With reciprocal actions if the Ukrainians tried to steal the IP. And also, they would be getting royalty payments for the missiles that the Ukrainians would build themselves. So there is a lot of good to come out of licensed production if the company couldn't build the missiles and sell them to Ukraine. And also on top of that, I would have a feeling that the president might not be entirely true on that, because the president wasn't really a big fan of giving them squat anyway. So it would be kind of convenient that the company would then come up with a reason to not do that for him either. Because it's like, well, if they don't want to let them have licensing rights, why don't you just give them some Patriots? And then if you moved on to step B, which is that, then the president would come up with another excuse or a reason as to why we can't give them. Meaning that's more so with him, not that company. But still, a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And someone just said in the chat, folks, how about sticking to war coverage and leave the domestic politics at home? Well, that's what we do. So, honestly, I thank you for appreciating that about our channel and realizing that. It's really something. But with that, we're on the next one.
That person might get Donkey of the Night.
Man, honestly, man, we might have to give him a mule.
Donkey of the Day. What's the night?
You know what? Honestly, you know what? Let's just say he's the ass of the day. Let's just cut it short and get to the
You know what a
business of it.
donkey is?
What?
Ass. That's what it is.
It's a lying dumb man. Oh man, oh boy. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here, actually, we need to grab a live chat for Cerberus, by the way. I
Oh.
forgot to grab it earlier, and sorry about that, Cerberus. This live chat question goes to Robert Massey. You said, do you think that the U.S. leadership will push to limit or completely end Ukrainian use of Starlink, will ultimately end up with them not being able to accurately target sites in Russia?
I would say I actually wouldn't really know, because I don't really know how a lot of those drones are making their way into Russia. Some of them might be using Starlink, others of them might not be. So I would have to say it's a little bit hard to be able to discern what they're using. So I don't know if it would really have an impact. So unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that live chat. But still, a big thanks to you, Cerberus, for sponsoring the live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have here a 5 from High C King, who said, is it true that the communists want to launch a low Earth orbit satellite system of dog-shocking mass destruction? Matt Wink, if it's true, I'm in the window. Hey, yo. Oh, you're not in my window, trust me. But I don't know about all that right there. I don't know. I feel like the commies... I don't think the commies are a threat like they used to be. Like even even China, they're not real commies. Like they're like capitalist commies. They're phony commies. They're not real commies. I mean, even North Korea is not real commies anymore. They're not really that either. I think they all kind of like got out of that whole mode. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that in my personal opinion, I think not. But a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the last super chat of the night.
We have one here from Insensum, who put in a 2 and said, after what has happened to Canada, are you that optimistic?
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? After what happened to Canada? Well, what happened to Canada, huh? What happened to Canada? Nothing. They chillin'. Well, actually, we're putting sanctions on
You
them.
gotta hate Canada. Canada's a real tough cookie. That Canada, they're up there just minding their own business, stealing the maple syrup. They said, "Sir, that was in the trees. It was a natural resource." And they said, "It's a profitable resource, sir, sir. Very sweet, very sweet." But they're nasty, though. They're nasty. Those Canadians. They've been doing the U.S. nasty, being a good friend. Those bastards. They've been real friendly. We're going to have to fix them up for that.
So I don't know what you mean, but I think I'm seeing from people in the chat. I think you mean in like what happened to Canada as far as domestic politics. Well, I mean, here in America, we have kind of a different system. Y'all have a parliamentary system. We have a federal republic democratic system. So because of that, it takes mountains and rivers moving to get anything done in this country in terms of domestic law. So you're not really going to be seeing anyone doing anything crazy here in America, like say, oh, let's ban all the guns, or, let's do something like that. Because what would happen is that the Supreme Court would shoot all that down. If that was attempted to be passed as a congressional act, someone would sue, and the Supreme Court would shoot it down and say it's unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court's already made a significant amount of rulings in that regard already. So it's like, on domestic political matters, they don't really matter because change in that sense is so slow legally that it'll never happen in our lifetime. And that's why I don't really care from the American system. I mean, if I was in Canada under a parliamentary system or in Britain, you bet your ass I'd be concerned about it because, if a party gets a large majority in the parliament, they can literally do whatever they want with absolutely no checks. It's basically like a mob-run democracy in a parliamentary system, but we don't have that here in America. So that means that really what matters here in terms of voting domestically is foreign policy, because foreign policy can truly change based off of who's the president and who we have elected in Congress. That is something that we have watched in real time change almost into a 180 because the current administration has been elected. And that's why I would say that that's the more important thing to vote on, because that can change. The domestic political topics haven't. I've been growing up my entire life, folks, for 24 years at this point, and I've listened to the endless arguments on gun control, abortion, and everything else, and I have quite literally, folks, never seen hardly a change to the status quo or the norm when I was a kid. Hardly anything has changed in any regard on both of those topics. So that's why I'm not really a big fan of saying that's my entire focus and obsession, because it's so slow moving. It's something that you could deal with a side thought and it wouldn't really even matter. So with that, we are on to the next super chat. We have one more, and this I think is our last one.
We also have one from Game Theory, who put in 10 once again. It said, knock, knock, who's there? A window. A window who? You better step away from it before you accidentally fall out. You gotta hate windows. They said, sir, those windows. It's a lot of pain. They call it window pain, sir. That's what they call it. It's a strange thing. Your standard window, it's a pain. It's a pain in the ass, that window, I tell you. A window to the soul, they say, sir.
And I gotta say, them windows are scary, especially in Russia. Goodness. But big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And also I saw Diane Marion say, you don't remember before you were a kid. That's true, I don't remember. But the thing is, though, is that if it's slow moving enough that it looks the same as when I was like 8 years old, and I'm 24 now, and it basically looks the same, then it's slow enough moving that doesn't need to be the daily focus of my life of like, oh my God, the Republicans or the Democrats and the guns and the abortion and all. It's like, it's going to be the same probably in the next 10 to 15 years. It's like, it's not really something that you have to dedicate your life to every day because it's going to move so slowly. You can do tons of other things or focus on other things with your vote in the meantime, and that still won't change, really. That's how I look at it. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on and into the live chats. We actually only have 3 more live chats left in the spreadsheet and the Morse code decoder. So, Matthew, what do we got?
So we have Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic Floaters, Kush, Kotik, Siren, Brian. And he said, the Morse code said, Russia is nothing more than a criminal outfit that happens to run a country with borders, and LLT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that down on the nail? That is Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate y'all greatly on getting that correct. Time and time again, it truly is amazing and impressive to know the Least Stone Corps never misses a Morse code message. And we're happy to see that once again tonight, it was not missed. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
This one goes to Marie Jacobs. He said, if the USA is lead command of NATO, if Article 5 is enacted, does that still hold true if the USA is already in a war with Iran? And is there a country with co-command powers just in case?
Yes. It generally would be the case that we would be in charge of NATO if Article 5 is declared. It's written in the charter legally that we are. But if there was a situation, there really is no co-commander, actually. There isn't really a hypothetical situation where that would exist. We are basically the sole unitary commander of NATO forces in the midst of an Article 5 declaration. There is really no dissension or plan B for that, as written in the NATO charter. So I hope that does address that the best I can. But if I had to tell you honestly, though, if someone really did have to come into the forefront, it would be the French. These days, the French are the second most important nation in the NATO alliance in terms of their command and control abilities. And so if the United States for some reason disappeared or removed itself from the equation, the French would step up and take our place. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to none other than A.F. Kaplan, who said, should we be concerned that Putler's doomsday plan could include the newly discovered Russian biolab?
I don't think so because they haven't used, well, rather than chloropicrin, they haven't really used chemical, biological, or nuclear weaponry against the state of Ukraine, and I would have a feeling that biological warfare would be looked down upon quite badly to the point that it might elicit a bad reaction from everyone around the world if the Russians started to use biological warfare against the Ukrainians. That's my personal thinking, but I could be wrong on that. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be none other than Punisher of the North, who said when Putin finally realizes he's lost everything, would he possibly use nuclear weapons?
In the kind of situation I'm thinking, it's possible, it's likely. Would he ever have the ability to really try? Maybe not. Because about by the time he's lost everything, everyone in Russia will have realized he's lost everything and they're going to want him gone. So he's going to kind of be in a race against time to either fire the nukes he's going to be in a race against time to try and fire the nukes before they remove him in a coup or some sort of a revolution or an ousting in Russia at that point, I would assume. So he will try, but he may fail depending on how it would go. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And crazily enough, we have one more super chat to cover. What do we got here?
So this one goes to Cerberus once more. He put in a 10 and said, sorry, one more. But for those watching outside the USA, sir, states make more rulings on how they run. So sad. I will make a beautiful order like never seen and Congress will sign. And forces pick a topic.
And I got to thank you for the support. And that's true. The states actually do have quite a lot of power on what goes on inside their own borders here in this country. And to pick a topic, well, I made a new rail car last night. I weathered a new one. I won't show you all the pictures though because it's quite late. Maybe we'll show it to y'all tomorrow in the next question segment. But I weathered up a new rail car. It's a TTX yellow boxcar, high cube, beautiful looking. Put a little bit of rust on it and a little bit of weathering, a little bit of what do they call it? Pen washing, and also the airbrush for grime. And it looked quite good actually. It's not extreme, but it is cool, and I'm quite happy with the results. So that would be my topic. Matthew, what is your topic?
My topic is food. Like, food's a good thing. You gotta have a little bit of food from time to time. A little bit of food's good. I'm starting to get a little bit hungry. The starving diet's not going to last very long. I can tell you that right now. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. So it's on my brain right now. It's food.
Everything is food. Man,
A hamburger is for the pleasure it gives. It's a thrill on the bill affair. Such heavenly dishes deserve the best. It's homing contentment beneath my best. It's something. I can't remember the rest.
There's nothing in the world that's so divine as a hamburger, tender and fine. I adore you, hamburger, mine. There we go.
And then Wimpy never paid him back. He was a debtor for life.
Man, then Brutus beat his ass, man. Remember he went,
oh yeah?
Bam, like beat him in the head with a pot or something. It was like brutal.
Mooching for a hamburger, eh?
Man, Brutus was on that business, man. Like he was shut on that business. But anyways,
and he was always grabbing up all on olive oil and junk. This dude should have been put in the pen.
Oh yeah, come here, woman. Get off of me! Like it's like honestly, it's like it's pretty fair. It's like get off her. What the hell's wrong with you, man? Like you whack. But man, nowadays, man, if they try to do that, bro, everyone on the street be like, what the hell? Everyone would have their phone out recording, you creep! It's like he is a creep. It's like, what the hell's up with this guy? But anyways, with that, it is time for us, folks, to move on into the end of the show. I got to thank you all greatly so much for watching once again tonight. We are always incredibly honored and greatly appreciative to run the stream for each and every last one of you. I got to say that it is an honor to know that 17.2 thousand people were here at the peak and 122,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world and to also run our Sunday night fundraiser. And if there is a short war video to be made, I'll be the one making that short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and of course, long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a huge shout out to the 120,000 plus people, a hell of a lot of people tonight joining us for the nightly War News stream. And be sure to join us again once more tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next nightly War News stream to cover the rest of the 24 hours of news and also for our Sunday night fundraiser stream as well. So be sure to join us for that. Last time was an absolute blowout. It was about $7 grand raised, which is insane, by the way. And maybe it might happen again, possibly. We'll have to see. But so be sure to join us again tomorrow. But with that, of course, Slava Ukraine. Here I'm Slava. Get some rest and good night.